Right. Make sure I got my volume up. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push 1. One of these days, I'll be happy that I don't have to do a mic check anymore. I could just go live. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation, Terrence Forrest Jr. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is Space and Technology, episode 368. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Just as an FYI, we do offer IT mentorship for those trying to get into IT for the first time, or if you're trying to transition from one IT role to another. We offer IT coaching, resume reviews and overviews and critiques, salary negotiations. And if you're in the tri-state area and you're looking for contracts to hire in IT, the Golden 11 does have recs available if you have the skill set. There is a docket in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to join the discussion and engage in the conversation, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so one of us can acknowledge you. If you don't raise your hand, you're going to be sitting there for a very long time, and it does get lonely in the waiting room. All right, let me get started with the first item on the docket. All right, first item on the docket is from Engadget.com. Microsoft workers say it's making progress on diversity. Microsoft's push for greater diversity in its workforce appears to be paying off. And it's not just the company's management saying so this time. The tech giant's 2019 Diversity and Inclusion Report offers the first public glimpse at Microsoft's Inclusion Index, or the percentage of employees who feel welcomed by both coworkers and management based on their identity. About 88% had positive sentiments about their sense of belonging and their belief in Microsoft's diversity efforts. Microsoft didn't break down the inclusion index by demographics, so it's unclear which groups are included in that unhappy 12%. Are they minorities who feel overlooked, majorities that disagree with the initiative, or a combination of groups? However, it did pledge to use the findings to better understand those who are upset and determine whether or not its campaign is having the intended impacts. This latest report also showed signs of general progress, including a newly expanded equal pay section that covers Microsoft's presence in the 5 largest markets outside the US: Canada, China, Germany, India, and the UK. The wider data suggests the gender pay gap is virtually non-existent, with women typically making 0.999 cents for every dollar men make. Representation also improved, although not by much. Women now make up 29.2% of Microsoft's core workforce. Up from 28% 28.1% in 2018. In the US, the Black community has climbed from 4.0% to 4.4%, while 33.3% are Asian versus 32.2% a year earlier. There were also very slight increases in Hispanic and multicultural workers. You can expect Microsoft to keep this up in the near future. The company portrayed diversity as a practical benefit, not just a feel-good initiative. It cited a study showing that people process exclusion the way they do physical pain, impeding their productivity and social interaction. A more representative workforce theoretically helps staff reach their potential on top of leading to products that truly reflect society. So this is interesting. I don't live too far away from Microsoft NERD, which is a New England Research and Development Center here in Boston, more particularly the Cambridge area. So I do see some diversity that they're reporting to, but I don't think it's enough. It doesn't reflect the population available in the United States. So I expect to see 15 to 20% of Microsoft's makeup being that of foundational Black Americans. And I find it interesting that Asians make up 32 to 33% of their workforce, but only represent 5% of Americans. So there's a lot that needs to be adjusted and reviewed based on these numbers. I think the Asian population in these areas is very telling of how they go about their hiring process. But I think a lot of this is going to change once Microsoft opens up more brick and mortars inside the continent of Africa. So you'll probably see a lot more hiring of melanated people. We got the first person on the panel, Raiders 48. What's going on? Raiders 48. Can you hear me? Can anybody in the chat hear me? Can anyone in the chat hear me? Okay, so it's not me. I don't know what's going on with this Raiders 48 brother. What's going on? Keep it techie.
What's up, Mike? How y'all doing?
Chilling, man. Chilling, man. You sound like you're on a speakerphone.
Yeah. I'm driving.
Okay. You have anything you want to contribute based on what was just read about Microsoft diversity?
No, I just think this is a good thing that brothers need to hop on or whatever, as far as, I mean, they opening the doors, to any and everybody. So
Yep.
I mean, it's just a good thing for us to hop on. So So I agree with what you said.
Yeah. I only know about one person who actually is Black that works at Microsoft. She's Ethiopian, but that's a whole nother story. Raiders 48, do you have anything you want to contribute? All right.
Are you talking to me, Mike?
No, Raiders 48. There's another person on the panel who has not spoken yet. I'm trying to understand. I might have to remove him from the panel if he doesn't speak by the next article. All right. Next item on the docket is from CNN.com. Nigerian entrepreneur Timi Giwe Tubason wins Jack Ma's African Business Hero Award. It's a picture of the brother here. A Nigerian entrepreneur has taken home the top prize at Jack Ma's Foundation first annual prize for African businesses. Timi Giwa Tubason walked away with the top $250,000 cash prize from the $1 million available from the African Entrepreneur Prize Initiative, AMPI, started by Chinese investor Jack Ma. The organization says it will award a $1 million grant to 10 African entrepreneurs every year for the next 10 years. Giwa Tubason is the founder and CEO of LifeBank, a Lagos-based blood and oxygen delivery company that connects registered blood banks to the hospitals and patients in need of urgent blood supplies. She said, the African Entrepreneur Prize will give me the resources to grow LifeBank and expand our presence in Nigeria and throughout the rest of Africa. I look forward to continuing my journey to solve problems and make a significant impact of the future of Africa. Giwa Tubason has also announced at the African Business Heroes event held in Accra, Ghana on Saturday that LifeBank will start delivering blood through unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, known as drones. She said the decision to add drones to their mobility fleet was to get blood to patients in places that are hard to reach. At the event, Giwa Tubason spoke about LifeBank's findings while researching the best situations to use drones for delivery. After running our operations for 3 years, we knew that there were some patients that we could not reach on time, like areas where there are bandits on the road, so we need to fly, she told CNN. According to her, the drones will only supply blood in emergency situations where patients are hard to reach. In October, in partnership with the Information Network Security Agency, INSA, the Ethiopian government agency tasked with exploring technology, the LifeBank team successfully did a test run of drone delivery in Ethiopia. What we did in Ethiopia was like a research project to show that we can deliver these critical supplies. We did that for a couple of weeks and it was successful. Giwa Tubason said, the drones are programmed to automatically pick up samples from blood banks and deliver to laboratories or hospitals without any form of human control. Giwa Tubason says, beyond Ethiopia, LifeBank's drone delivery services will be tested and launched in other regions, including Nigeria. We have the best results. We have the results of success, and we are going to do the same in another country, perhaps Nigeria, she said. Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation, needs up to 1.8 million units of blood every year, but the National Blood Transfusion Services collects only about 66,000 units per year, leaving a deficit of more than 1.7 pints of blood, according to the country's health ministry. Through their real-time delivery of blood using motorcycles and boats, LifeBank is trying to improve the numbers in the West African country. Their dispatch riders pick up specified units of blood from blood banks, storing it in their motorbike's cold chain transport box and delivering to the required hospitals quickly, a challenge in gridlock Lagos. Around 10,000 applicants from 50 African countries were whittled down just to 10 for the African Business Heroes finale event held Saturday in Accra, Ghana. The final 10 pitched their businesses to 4 judges, including Ma, Zimbabwean businessman Steve Masiwa, Joe Tsai, vice chairman, Alibaba Group, and banking boss Ibukun Awaskia. In second and third place were Egyptian Omar Sakar, founder and CEO of Nawa Scientific, and Crystal Kwizera, founder Water Access Rwanda, who were awarded $150,000 and $100,000 each. The remaining finalists each walked away with $65,000 for their businesses. This is dope. This is real dope. I didn't realize it was in the man. I apologize for that. I think this is just dope. Yeah, this is Butterlade. Yeah, this is just really dope because what the drone does is it traverses the unpaved roads and in the environment that's without infrastructure, and then traverses all of that and just says, "Screw you, we're going to go over it," and cuts down hours of time that it would have taken by car. This is just the beginning, because what's going to happen eventually is that you're going to have to have human transport drones to get over Africa. There's no real reason to build, long highways in the capacity that the rate of drones will take place. I mean, you still need roads for transporting goods and whatnot, but the idea of moving from one country to another at the drop of a hat with a drone by people just getting in there is going to be an immense transformation. So, yeah, all these pictures of this Butterlade stuff, man. Josh, I know you can't see the screen because you're driving, but how handy are you, with like hardware stuff like that? Can you build stuff like this? Are you into stuff like this?
Yeah, to be honest, no. But one thing I guess I can relate to this. There's always people out there trying to hack stuff and trying to figure out how to. I watch a lot of videos where people try to hack these drones, where you can take over them and just bring them back to like a home base or whatever. So I think that will open up another market as well. I mean, that people are not really, Black people are not really savvy on. There's what they call bug bounties. And I know I'm kind of taking it a different direction.
Yep.
But yeah, so I mean, they're basically white hat hackers that go out and test this infrastructure and the code that's running on these drones to try to find bugs. And the companies will pay you. You just have to put together not a proposal, but all the documentation on how you actually hacked one of these things, and they'll pay you depending on how bad the vulnerability is. Mm-hmm. So that's another market tied to that Black people can hop on. But yeah, I've never really dealt with hardware too much. I mean, I follow a couple guys that do, but yeah, I haven't personally.
Yeah, I think it's important that guys get some hands-on experience in building things with their hands. I know complex design is a very hands-on type of person, putting together carts and stuff like that. That's going to be really big in fourth industrialization in these emerging markets and emerging technologies. The ability to just look at something, pick up a drill or a hacksaw or a sawzall or something like that, and not be afraid to just go ahead and cut down some chromoly or something like that, or 3D printing. The ability to just look at something and say, okay, let me chart this down on a piece of paper and kind of sketch it up. That stuff is going to be really critical in places like the continent, in places like Latin America, Central America, and whatnot, because you're going to have to build from scratch. That's just the nature now. You want to whip up something, you got to have the ability to think on your feet and actually say, yeah, this is the way that it should go, and be confident about it. One of the things that I have learned when I was an undergrad was that they had us first semester look at a Humvee. This was right around the time that Operation Iraqi Freedom, and we had to look at a Humvee and look at all the vulnerabilities of it and how we can improve it, and how would we improve on a Humvee without actually driving it or anything like that. Just look at it from an observation standpoint. What would you do to improve it? Where are the vulnerabilities? Where are the weak spots that you see? The ability to think on your feet within 45, you have 45 minutes to actually make that assessment. And so because of that, the idea isn't that you're actually going to do it, but it's, can you think on your feet without having enough knowledge on the application itself?
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm glad you brought up 3D printers. I don't see a lot of black folks actually into that type of stuff. And I see guys all online, you know, WMs, you know, designing stuff and just printing this stuff up on their own. I mean, I could never afford one. Well, not never, but I just haven't been able to afford one. But I'm really interested in it, and I follow a lot of channels that actually cover 3D printing. But yeah, that's a cool, I guess, venture, because you can come up with your own design for something and just print it out, you know. So. But that's cool though. I didn't know you went through something like that with the whole Humvee, because I remember when they first came out with the next gen. Well, when they started coming out with the MRAPs, with the V-shape hull to so when you rolled over the IEDs, the blast would spread out versus coming straight up into the vehicle. So yeah. Somebody came up with that design, you know.
Well, to be honest with you, the Africans actually came up with that design during the Cold War, because when the Africans, the melanated people, were attacking the governments, the racist apartheid governments, they were using IEDs to blow up their vehicles. And what the colonialists figured out was that actually creating a V-hull would actually reduce and increase the survivability of the vehicle. And so the Americans had not thought of that yet, because they didn't have to go through that sort of warfare. They were used to actually dealing with Vietnam. That was like the previous war that they had. But during the 70s and 80s, the Nelson Mandela and the ANC and many of the uprisings that were happening were destroying all of the military vehicles that the apartheid governments had. And so they had to come up with a solution. And that solution was to have a V-hull, which is an MRAP, mine resistant, ambush protected, for those who listen to the chat. They had came up with that design first, and then the Western powers started to adopt it when they went into Desert Storm. They figured out that IEDs were killing them too.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that, man. You're gonna make me research it.
Yeah. They had a the apartheid governments in Zimbabwe had came up with a contraption called the Pookie. I'll get into that another time, man. That's some very interesting history. All right, let me get to the next item on the docket. Oh shit. What is this? Okay. All right, this one is from cointelegraph.com. Blockchain technology faces a tug of war between scalability and decentralization. Block Show Asia 2019 hosted some big names today for a panel on blockchain scalability. All the speakers agreed people have to choose between scalability and decentralization. The panel included Max Kordick, CEO at Lisk, Matthew Tan, founder of Etherscan, Saranya Sirium, technical lead at Microsoft Azure, and Xinji Wang, co-founder of Litecoin Foundation. It attracted a large audience for such a super technical discussion. Speaking about the difficulties of scaling a blockchain to the next level, Cordes said that blockchain scalability is a trade-off. You can't simply scale a blockchain for free. This is why I always laugh when I hear about projects promising 50,000 transactions per second. At Litecoin, we always choose decentralization and security over scalability. Unfortunately, we can't do both, but we try to find something in the middle. The sentiment was echoed by Matthew Tan, who added that there is no reason to pursue infinite scalability. Besides the relevant subject and the strong opinions expressed, the panel didn't get much engagement from the audience on this niche topic. At the end of the panel, no one had any questions for the speakers. Yeah, I talked about this before, that scalability is going to be critical for a lot of blockchain applications, because if you're talking about payments from a point of sale system, then what's going to happen here is that on times like Black Friday, when you see massive influx in volume, that scalability needs to be there. If it stops at any time during a sale, that's going to be the weakest link in the digital infrastructure itself. And so it's not going to be able to keep up with demand, because you're going to have multiple transactions happening at once, whether it's from Amazon or some other retail vendor, online vendor. You're going to have to take that into consideration. And so do you go for scalability in IoT because you're going to have a lot of transactions, or do you go for security and decentralization in terms of retail because you need it, or some other viable market? All right, let me get to the next article. All right, this one is from Yahoo Finance. What happened to the page? Oh, Intel at Supercomputing 2019, Z architecture, GPUs, and more. Intel recently unveiled latest GPUs powered by its Z architecture at Supercomputing 2019 event held at Denver, Colorado. The GPUs are aimed at accelerating complex high-performance computing and AI workloads. The GPUs will utilize the company's 7-nanometer technology and robust packaging technologies, including EMIB and Foveros 3D. The new GPUs will also leverage the chipmaker's strength in intellectual property, compute express link interconnect, and high bandwidth memory. Intel is optimistic about its foray into the GPU market with its Z-based discrete GPUs. The company also intends to enable the new graphic card to support its one API software, which simplifies programming across its CPU, GPU, AI, and FPGA accelerators. In fact, at the event, Intel also introduced open standards-based one API industry initiative to offer a simple programming model to enhance development of applications involving cross architectures, including FPGA, CPUs, GPUs, and other accelerators. Intel also announced one API initiative will complement its data-centric technical expertise to power the Aurora exascale system at Argonne National Laboratory. Aurora will utilize Intel's Xeon scalable platform, the latest Z architecture-powered GPUs, Optane DC persistent memory, and other connectivity technologies. The key capabilities of Aurora supercomputer include support of 230 petabytes of storage and 10 petabytes of memory. The supercomputer slated for release in 2021 will feature 6 new Z-based GPUs and 2 10 nanometer base Xeon scalable processors. The key takeaways: Intel is making every effort to make a mark in the GPU market, currently dominated by NVIDIA and advanced micro devices. Per latest JPR report, NVIDIA held discrete GPU market share of 67.9% in second quarter 2019, compared with AMD's 32.1%. NVIDIA's dominance in the market on account of the significantly higher functionality of its GPU cards is worth mentioning. Meanwhile, AMD expanding GPU portfolio catering to every price point cannot be ignored. Although challenging environment is a concern, we believe Intel's strength is installed base. Integrated graphics card expertise and enhanced IP portfolio hold promise. Intel Corporation price consensus chart markedly growing proliferation of AI techniques in ML, machine learning, and deep learning tools in data center, cloud computing, gaming, automotive, and blockchain are primarily responsible for driving GPU demand. Moreover, Intel's acquisition of Hyderabad, India-based India Systems, a fables chip maker, in a bid to accelerate discrete GPU business initiatives remains noteworthy. Additionally, Intel is well poised to benefit from robust innovation in software development. Specifically, one API initiative is expected to aid Intel design robust GPUs to effectively address the evolving data center demand of supporting complex HPC workloads. All right. All right, let me get to the next item on the docket. All right. Cloud compute, this one's from zdnet.net. Cloud computing, SaaS, IaaS, and PaaS, which is growing faster. All right. As cloud computing continues to eat up traditional tech spending, businesses are beginning to change where they spend their money. The worldwide public cloud services market is forecast to grow 17% in 2020 to a total of $266.4 billion, up from $227.8 billion in 2019, according to tech analyst Gartner. Cloud computing adoption has now become mainstream, said Sid Nag, research vice president at Gartner. That means higher spending on cloud, but also higher expectations from cloud buyers as to what they will get for their money. According to Gartner, software as a service will remain the largest market segment. SaaS is forecast to grow to $116 billion next year, up from $99.5 billion in 2019. The second largest sector is cloud infrastructure as a service, IS, which will reach $50 billion in 2020. IS is forecast to grow 24% year over year, the highest growth rate across all market segments, which Gartner said was the result of data center consolidation. That's because modern applications of workloads, many of which are cloud applications themselves, now require infrastructure at a scale that traditional data centers cannot meet. Cloud computing was listed among the top 3 areas where most global CIOs will increase their investment next year. Gartner said, as organizations increase their reliance on cloud technologies, IT teams are rushing to embrace cloud-built applications and relocate existing digital assets. However, as the use of cloud computing goes mainstream, the landscape will become increasingly sophisticated and competitive, so much so that customers will need help with managing multiple cloud suppliers and applications. Cloud native capabilities, application services, multi-cloud and hybrid cloud comprise a devised cloud ecosystem that will be important differentiators for technology product managers. Demand for strategic cloud service outcomes signals an organizational shift toward digital business outcomes, NAG said. So I think we talked about this before, that we had a live stream before about this, that the need to upskill yourself to keep up with the market is going to be critical going into 2020 next year. So the article even co-signs a lot of stuff that I'm saying. It confirms a lot of stuff that I've been saying on here, that you need to up your skill set. Now is the time to do it, because once 2020 comes, everybody's going to be pretty much in. And if they're not in now, they will be by the end of 2020, going into 2021. And then by 2022, you'll see a major shift because of 3-year development life cycles in hardware as well as software. Everything will go SaaS, everything will go cloud at some point within the next 18 to 24 months. I don't even know if anybody can actually hear me right now. I don't see any chatter in the chat itself.
But you're right, Mike. Just to add a little bit to it, I know the last place that'll be, or organizations that'll be moving to the cloud will be the government, because they always behind. Meaning like military, government contracts, they always behind. I mean, they just the year before last, they just got off of Windows 7 on a lot of their systems. So just learning this stuff, I mean, you're gonna have a job on migrating and all that, because it's coming. Just like what Mike said, it's coming.
Don't forget that the government just picked up an Amazon cloud computing contract with AWS, and Microsoft Azure just won a multi-billion-dollar contract as well. So Oracle lost the bid on both of those. So I think Google is also in a bid for a government contract as well. So now's the time to get certified. And now's the time to learn Linux, because 80% of cloud computing is run on Linux. Very little of it is run on Windows.
Exactly. Only thing that's going to be on Windows is going to be the client systems. So.
Yep. And then you're going to have desktop as a service, where there will be no more regular computers with Windows on it. That's all going to be virtualized systems as a service, virtual machines as a service. VMware, VMware, Hyper-V.
I worked on a short contract with the DOE, and all the systems in the main building that I worked in, all virtualized. They were all virtualized systems. No desktops at all.
Yep. The decentralization and air gapping is a part of security. So if they lose a system, they don't care about the hardware as long as they can protect the data. All right, next one is from CNBC.com. China throws its weight behind AI and blockchain as it aims to be the world's tech leader. China, once seen as an imitator when it came to technology, is now looking to take the lead in areas from blockchain to artificial intelligence, much hyped technologies that are seen as critical to the future. Despite the US-China trade war, experts say the world's second largest economy will continue pushing its domestic technology sector. Future of AI, blockchain, financial technology, fintech, and smartphones will be among the topics discussed at East Tech West, CNBC's technology conference held in Nansha district of Guangzhou, China. Here's a look at what China is doing in some of the key technology areas. Artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a broad term for technology that makes machines mimic human intelligence. For example, in recognizing images or speech. US and Chinese tech firms are pumping a lot of money into developing AI, and both countries have launched their own national strategies around it. In 2017, Beijing laid out plans to become the world's leader in artificial intelligence by 2030, with the aim of making the industry worth 1 trillion yuan or 147.7 billion US dollars. China has rolled out AI uses such as facial recognition technology on a large scale. The US is seen as having the lead. However, when it comes to research and development, on AI, China is implementing the technology very fast in facial recognition, speed recognition, self-driving vehicles, smart technologies or smart cities, and medical diagnosis. Rebecca Fannin, author of Tech Titans of China, told CNBC. The US still has the lead on research and development in AI, but China is catching up with the tech titans in AI, as well as numerous well-funded startups such as Face++, SenseTime, and iFlyTech. China is closing the technological gap with the United States, and though it may not match US capabilities across the board, it will soon be one of the leading powers in technologies such as artificial intelligence and other technologies, the Council on Foreign Relations said in a recent report. In China, financial technology is booming. Global investment in fintech ventures more than doubled in 2018 to $55.3 billion, with China accounting for around 46% of that figure, according to Accenture. The country is home to some of the world's biggest fintech firms, such as Alibaba, Affiliate Ant Financial, which runs popular Alipay mobile systems app. Mobile payments, or paying with a scanned code on your phone, is one area in which China has led the way. Alipay and Tencent-owned WeChat Pay can be used all over the country, from big department stores to street stalls. But these services are also known as super apps because within the platform, users are able to get other products from microloans to wealth management products. They have provided a way for Chinese consumers to bypass the banks to some extent. China's mobile payment market is most advanced in the world. Alipay and WeChat are two tech titans in this space, Fannin said. Cash is dead in China, so are credit cards. Henry Alsowin, chairman of FinTech Association of Hong Kong, said that technology firms have been driving innovation in financial services, something he calls TechFin. What's been really interesting for us is that the real innovation from a TechFin perspective happened not only in Silicon Valley, but really happened here in Asia, in China in particular. Arcelinin told CNBC in a East Tech West preview show. For many banks around the world, when they want to see what is the disruption coming ahead, what can really disrupt their business, they don't look at Silicon Valley now, but they rather look at China and Asia. But Chinese fintech has often moved faster than regulators. Now regulators are putting frameworks in place to have a better grasp on what's going on to help China maintain a leading position in fintech. Earlier this year, China's central bank has issued a 3-year fintech development plan with the aim of making China the world's leader in fintech. Chinese firms are now some of the biggest in the world. 3 out of top 5 smartphone vendors are Chinese, with Huawei sitting at number 2. Chinese smartphone makers have been accused of copying the likes of Apple when it comes to smartphone designs. But in the past couple of years, they've begun to push the boundaries on handset innovation. Many Chinese vendors get played with reputations for being copycats. And while some of that is valid, what gets overlooked is how much of these same vendors are oftentimes ahead of the rest of the industry in areas like camera screens and charging. Brian Ma, Vice President, Devices Research at IDC. Ma pointed to devices like Xiaomi's Mi CC9, which has a 108 megapixel camera, and other devices from the company which have edge-to-edge screens. Blockchain's first major application was for the cryptocurrency Bitcoin. It's a so-called decentralized ledger transaction that cannot be tampered with, and it underpins Bitcoin. But the meaning and uses of the technology has evolved. It's now being trialed and used by various industries, from finance to the food industry. China has thrown its backing behind the technology. According to state media, President Xi Jinping said that China has a strong foundation and should look to take a leading position in the technology. He reportedly said China should seize the opportunity offered by blockchain, adding that the technology could benefit a range of industries, including finance, education, and healthcare. Edith Young, managing partner at blockchain-focused venture capital for Proof of Capital, says Xi's remarks show China's determination in the sector. It's clear China wants to lead the world standard for blockchain technology. Yuan told CNBC. China is really a government-driven country. 5G refers to next generation mobile networks that promise faster data speeds and low latency. The latter refers to the quicker speeds at which data arrives from the time it is summoned. This is key to underpin technologies like driverless cars, which cannot afford any data lag. The number of countries such as South Korea and the US are rolling out 5G networks, while China recently turned on its 5G network ahead of the previously announced 2020 timeline. 5G is set to play a key role in technology development moving forward, but it is also highly politicized issue. The US has tried to convince countries not to use equipment from Chinese firm Huawei in their 5G networks. Huawei is the world's largest telecommunications gear maker. The US says the Huawei is a national security risk because its hardware could be used by the Chinese government to spy on citizens. Huawei has repeatedly denied the claims. Still, China is on track to become the biggest 5G market in the world. The country will account for the largest number of 5G connections by 2025, more than North America and Europe combined, according to the mobile industry body, GSMA. We have Complex Design on the panel.
Hey, what's going on, Mike? What's going on, everyone?
I'm chilling, fam.
Man, you talking my language right there with Chinese componentry and, various companies that make next level stuff, and how, largely like Chinese stuff is pigeonholed as copycat and cheap and all that. And they're the world's manufacturer, right? They're the world's factory. So they can produce a lot of that for the lower level markets. But what do you think? You don't think that there's like a high scope of technology that exists there, given all of the all the electronics components and stuff that they build for the rest of the world? They probably have, like, I would posit today, some of the most highly developed shit amongst anyone given the scope of manufacturing that they've been able to perform, you know. And like they mentioned like a company like Xiaomi, for example. So so for 2020, we positioned ourselves to be the Western states authorized repair facility for Xiaomi scooters. Real talk, because Xiaomi produces. So there's a company that so there's the way the Chinese companies work, right? So there's a couple companies that actually make components for like different brands, like different. So how do you put this? So for example, Xiaomi has 9bot components. 9bot also makes the Segway stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's like when you kind of understand how the Chinese realm of business works, you see how it is that they're able to do things and produce companies like Huawei, for example, who basically at net currently owns 50% of the 5G market. And we ain't even really, you see the political red tape, you know, that's been going on with Huawei and ZTE here in the States, because the United States doesn't want them here, because what other companies competing with them on that level here? I mean, if there were companies that really like that had that had what Huawei had, we would have more 5G infrastructure and components and all that stuff by now. And you'd also be seeing commercial rollout of it. China already has buses, automated electric buses running on this shit without accidents.
With wireless charging.
Come on, man.
Yeah, that's why we talk about, you know, blockchain a lot. You know, Lionel has a blockchain study group. You know, I got a lot of flack for comparing ADOS, or Foundational Black Americans, FBA, to everyone else. So how can you compare, you know, African Americans to, you know, the Chinese? I think that's an apples to orange comparison. Actually, it's not. We just read the article that says, I'm putting my money behind my people to make sure that they are the global leaders by 2030. It's 2020. It'll be 2020 in 90 days.
I don't think people really even realize that. I don't even think they realize that. You know, in April, it'll be 420 all month long, dude.
Yeah. But, you know, if you're not actually keeping up, then you think that the Chinese are going to say, well, why don't we have diversity and inclusion in Shenzhou, in Shanghai?
Uh-oh, Mike, did you drop out again, man?
Can you hear me?
There you go. You left off at Shanghai.
No, I was saying that you know, I don't think that the Chinese government is going to say, let's have more diversity and inclusion by bringing on more Negroes from the United States, you know, and have you know, this sort of diverse workforce in a monolithic society. That's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen.
You would have to actually take the initiative now and position yourself over the next 10 years. They're saying by 2030, they are going to be the global leaders.
Yeah. So either you figure out a way to leverage what it is that they're bringing to the table, because that's sure as hell what I do. Okay. You know, you could either be a partner to someone or be their competition. Take your pick.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, so when I say ADOS has to think as a global, on a global scale, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, you know, ADOS needs to pick up some burners, some blickies, and get ready for China. That's not what I'm talking about.
That's not what that you know, that's how people interpret that shit largely. You know, that's what's crazy. They actually think that that's what, you know what I mean? When we say these things, that why would you interpret it like that?
Right. All right, let me get to this next article from Cointelegraph. Artificial intelligence will enable the future, blockchain will secure it. Speaking at Block Show Asia 2019, Totalarity CEO Tofi Salabah pose a hypothetical question to the audience. How many people would take a pill that made you smarter, knowing they can be controlled by a society, a social entity? No one raised their hand, and he was unsurprised. That's the response that I get. 0% of you, he continued.
Hey, Mike, I think we got somebody trying to join the panel. Let me stop the others. Okay.
Yeah. Now imagine the same time at the same time, the pill has autonomous decentralized governance so that no one can control or repurpose that pill but the host, yourself. This time, hands were raised in abundance. Decentralized governance represent a necessary step for the tech community to build up a trust in digital developments related to securely managing the big data. Economics and ethics can go together thanks to decentralization, commented Singularity Net CEO Ben Gortzel. But does the decentralized governance represent a step forward from centralization, or it is just an illusion of evolution? Gortzel didn't fully agree. I don't think it's intrinsic. The reason centralized systems are simpler to come by is how institutions are built right now. There is nothing natural about centralization of data. He elaborated on the mutual dependence of two important technologies. Blockchain is not as complex as AI, but it is a necessary component of the future. Without BTC, you don't have the means of decentralized governance. AI enables the future, blockchain secures it. I agree with him. These are all components of digital transformation in the fourth industrialized revolution.
I mean, I think, dare we say the cornerstones? Some of the cornerstones.
Throw 5G in there as well for communications.
Yep. This is the main stuff that this whole fourth industrialization is predicated upon. This is the driver.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hebrew Vulcans. Your reason why you're blocked is because you violated YouTube's new community guidelines when you posted something in one of our comment section. So that's why you're blocked. And we will not unblock you.
Oh man, we can't have that.
Yeah, you shouldn't have posted that. I have no idea why you would post something like that.
But yeah, this is why all these companies are really pushing the artificial intelligence. You know what I'm saying? They coming up with these databases. Like, and I know you're gonna get to this article later on, but you know, putting data in these databases and using it to build this artificial intelligence where they can personalize ads and all that stuff. You know, everything is gonna be on there. Everything about your life. And I know you talked about that in another hangout where your personal information is gonna be put on the blockchain at some point where you can secure it. You know, so
yeah. All right, let's go to this next one from Engadget. Presidential hopeful Andrew Yang wants your data to be your property. Andrew Yang, tech entrepreneur turned Democratic presidential hopeful, may not be a leading candidate in the race, but he has gained attention for his unique ideas about how to address technology, the companies behind it, and the impact it's having on the country. He has proposed giving every American $12,000 a year to soften the blow of jobs lost to automation, and he has toyed with campaigning via hologram. While these ideas have come out in bits and pieces, Yang officially revealed his comprehensive tech policy today. Yang's plan is a four-pronged approach. It calls for treating data like property and establishing a digital bill of rights, creating a Department of the attention economy to minimize the health impacts of modern tech, stopping the spread of misinformation, as well as a new approach to regulating tech companies.
Like I was telling Zone in the chat, I think it was last week, why it is that I'm an Andrew Yang supporter. Yeah, he probably. I mean, dude, they basically kept him out of the debates on purpose.
Yeah,
because his ideas are so fucking forward thinking, and they're largely based on fourth industrialization. If you really look at his platform, look at what the dude is pushing. What Mike's talking about, this is one of the things here, but it's very tech oriented, and it's tech oriented in a way to protect the people. Because he's like, okay, look, this shit is coming. So we have to have some sort of common sense regulatory body, or we have to have a governmental position on it that says, okay, well, look, there's the technology, there's the people, and we need to regulate it and legislate it in such a way to keep the pervasiveness of the technology, out of people's lives, because it literally affects our health. People who have just stay on Facebook and get anxiety over likes and shit on Instagram and stuff. I mean, dude, that's that's not the signs of a normally functioning society.
It becomes a mental health awareness issue, public health issue.
Bingo.
Yep. Yang says personal data is the fastest growing industry in the US, and he believes citizens should have more control, but like the ability to see how their data is being used and opt out if they choose. He wants to study the impact technology is having on kids' brains, socio-emotional states, and cognitive and physical development. And he's calling for accountability from Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Regarding misinformation, Yang writes, we must address once and for all the publisher versus platform gray area that tech companies have lived in for years. Yang also says breaking up tech giants, as Elizabeth Warren proposes, is the wrong approach. Instead, he says we need politicians who understand technology and a modern way to regulate it. So, I don't think he's trying to run for president. I think he is a technocrat trying to sneak in through the back door.
Dare you say?
Yeah. Yeah, he's a technocrat trying to squeeze his way into what will eventually become a United States, at least in a Western power standpoint, a digital monarchy where you have Facebook and all these social media companies and all these cloud computing companies, AWS and Google. Yep, Google. They all are going to form this sort of G20 style summit.
They already have it.
Yeah, where they control 2/3 of the world's population through a few lines of code.
Yeah. Yep.
So in order to counter this, you would have to protect your intellectual property, which is your personal identity and your sensitive information.
And data that pertains to you, yep.
And having the ability to monetize it by saying, I'll give you access to X company if you pay me in cryptos on the fly, right? I think there's Ty City has brought this up a couple of times about an XRP, a Ripple system that's supposed to pay you on the fly while also collecting taxes from the government, right? Or the government collects its taxes on the fly, where you're basically being taxed on the fly for every sort of cent that you make,
right?
In terms of crypto. So this could actually create a new ecosystem where Black people who are major consumers in this country will be able to monetize their interests.
Their activities, yeah.
Their interests.
Yeah.
And this is important for Africans because there's 1 billion people on the continent, soon to be 2 billion by 2080. That's a lot of money that's going to be generated because they're trying to, the tech companies want to monetize all of this for big data.
Yeah, and you should be, if you are the source of this data, right? Then you should be compensated for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
This is
so
why. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, Josh. What up, bro?
No, I was just gonna point out. This is one reason why I started my channel
Mm-hmm.
to try to bring awareness to um, this data collection. And I haven't done videos on it, but this is why I push Linux, because Linux is an open source operating system,
Mm-hmm.
and you can control what you put out there. You have more
Mm-hmm.
control. With Microsoft, for instance, they're pushing it to where now you have to have a Microsoft account in order to start the operating system up or to complete the installation. So they're getting data from you from the start of you opening up that laptop. They're
Mm-hmm.
gathering data on you to push ads on you, and they're getting paid big money to push these ads
Mm-hmm.
to you based on your everybody's account has a advertisement ID associated with it, and everything that. And I'm sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you good. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. That advertisement ID is is basically tied to you and all your personal information that they're collecting and that they're pushing. That's why when you're talking, I mean, it's crazy because you can talk in front of your Android phone and then go to Facebook, and whatever you and your wife were talking about
There's an ad.
personally, there's an ad about that. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy the way they're collecting all your information. And that also ties to the it was that bill that got overturned, net neutrality, which
Yep.
was
Yeah.
dealing with the like Comcast, the
Yep.
providers,
Yep.
because they collect all your information. And that's why I push Linux as well, because I mean, and VPNs and all that's using VPNs because you bypass the DNS servers of those companies that are providing the internet to you, so they don't get your information and what you're doing and what sites you're visiting and sell that information to advertisement companies.
Well, I think
Go ahead.
no, I think what's going to eventually happen. I think Firefox is kind of leading this way, where they have secure browsing. Basically, all of your traffic, your searches are secure,
Yep.
so they can't intercept that type of stuff. And I think Opera actually just came out with an update to their browser where they basically tell you who's tracking you.
Yep, that's why I remember Complex was. I remember he brought it up, and I use it to this day. But the Brave browser, you can basically control. I mean, I know it's kind of annoying. That's the thing with your privacy. You give up the convenience of actually just opening up a browser and going wherever. Sometimes you have to take certain more steps in order to protect yourself. Um, but the Brave browser it kind of does the same thing. It has the private browsing, which really doesn't do much, but there's a private browsing over Tor, which your information is pushed through these different nodes on the network, so you can't really see what you're actually looking at or what you're going to. And it's not about you have anything to hide. It's about protecting your information.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. This next one is from Reuters.com. Google signs healthcare data and cloud computing deal with Accession. Alphabet Incorporated's Google has signed its biggest cloud computing customer in healthcare to date in a deal giving it access to data sets that could help it tune potentially lucrative artificial intelligence tools. Google and Accession, which operates 150 hospitals and more than 50 senior living facilities across the United States, said the healthcare provider would move some data and analytics tools in its facilities on Google servers. The deal was mentioned in Google's July earnings call, but drew scrutiny on Monday after the Wall Street Journal reported that Google would gain personal health related information of millions of Americans across 21 states. The journal reported that the data involved in the project includes lab results, doctor diagnosis, and hospitalization records, among other categories, and amounts to a complete health history along with patient names and dates of birth. Google said in a blog post on Monday that patient data cannot and will not be combined with any Google consumer data. Accession are the stewards of the data, and we provide services on their behalf, wrote Tariq Shakat, president for industry products and solutions at Google Cloud. In the press release, Accession said the partnership is in compliance with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, which safeguards medical information. Google Cloud Chief Executive Officer Thomas Curran has made it a priority in his first year on the job to get to aggressively chase business from leaders to six industries, including healthcare. The company previously toted smaller healthcare clients, such as the Colorado Center for Personalized Medicine, though cloud storage is a business with thin profit margins. Google Cloud has said it hopes to separate itself from larger rivals Microsoft Azure and Amazon Web Services with a superior slate of higher margin AI tools. Accession said its aim is to use AI to help improve clinical effectiveness as well as patient safety. Google's blog post did not mention AI, but said the companies were in early testing on how to make better use of Accession's data. Google has spent several years developing artificial intelligence to automatically analyze MRI scans and other patient data to identify diseases and make predictions aimed at improving outcomes and reducing costs. The news follows an early announcement from Google that it would buy Fitbit Incorporated for $2.1 billion.
Oh my God.
Aiming to enter the wearable segment and invest in digital health.
Oh, wow, dude.
Well,
Oh my God.
Yeah, brother Dr. Phoenix talked about this for the last couple of months.
There's like, well, shit. We were talking about it heavy like 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's the reason why I'm sitting here just kind of like I'm putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, do you remember back in maybe 2005, 2006, 2007, there was a Google application called Google Health. Do you remember this?
Yep.
You remember? Okay. So what Google did at that time, because remember, they said it's not available to use anymore. Right? Because if you look up Google Health, it's not a application that you can use or implement for business use or anything like that. What Google was doing back then was creating a HIPAA compliant, basically a HIPAA compliant, cloud-based, or at that time it was their own. It was based on their whole Google Docs platform, but then they segmented it off and created a whole different stack for health-related practices. And the whole point was it was a test bed to make it HIPAA compliant. They did this shit about 13, 14, 15 years ago. Okay. Yeah. Now, go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
I was gonna say, now you fast forward, because now what they've done is they've built the cloud computing infrastructure, because cloud computing wasn't as big back then, Mike, as it is today. Right? Like, your companies weren't utilizing the cloud like they utilize it today. So you add a HIPAA compliant, just sort of like experimental application that you just let people use for free, and then you shut it down when you know that it has the effectiveness, right? And you know how to utilize it. Then you develop your cloud infrastructure business over the next few years, right? And then the last piece is you make your deals with hospital operators, and then you buy a wearable device company like Fitbit. God damn, it's brilliant.
Yeah, because Fitbit has go right ahead, Josh.
No, I was just gonna add to this, man. This ties to the statement I said a while back, man. I remember seeing Google looking at acquiring Fitbit, and also this is they're coming out with the Google Watch.
Mm,
Um, so they are tracking all of your health data from these. They're going to be tracking all your health data
mhm.
and tying that into the systems that Complex Design was just talking about, where they gonna know you sick before you even go to the doctor. It's just gonna be that sophisticated the way
Dude, the
they have
Fitbit
all this set
devices
up.
are gonna let them know.
Yeah, yeah, and it's it's just crazy. That's the type of information that they're tracking, as well as stuff for advertisement. So if you search, and that's another thing I wanted to bring up. Everybody has a Google account, a
Yep.
Gmail account, an email account.
Mhm.
Um, these guys, well, Google scans all your email. So
Yep.
anything that comes through your email, they scan it.
Yep.
They had an article a while back where uh, people were having an uprising because Google was tracking all your purchases. So if you search that, anybody in the chat, you search that, removing your financial tracking on Google,
Yep.
there's a spot where you can go to remove all that information, but they track everything you purchase. When you go to Starbucks and buy a coffee, when you go wherever and you opt in to, oh, I'll just get the digital receipt where they send it to my email. Well,
Yep.
Google is tracking all that.
Yep.
And they're putting a database that's tied to your ID,
Mhm.
so they can know what to advertise to you, as
Mhm.
well as they can look at your health and like whatever you're working, how you work out. If you track
Mhm.
all that stuff through your Google account, they'll eventually know when you're sick before you even go to the doctor. So, or they even know
Well,
what to look for, you know.
well, not even just that. It helps them pitch Whole Foods. If you're Amazon and you're looking at this data, you can say, "Oh yeah, by the way, Whole Foods is having a sale 2 for 1 on
Oh,
organic this,
how
organic
dare
that."
you? How
Yeah,
dare you, Mike? How
yeah,
dare
that's what they do.
you?
That's what they
Ah,
do.
you're right.
I knew you were going there.
Yep. Yep. You like smoking cannabis? Oh yeah. We also have these e-cigarettes and so on and so forth. You like to smoke this, you could probably smoke that too. What's the company that owns Corona? Um,
Wait, what's that again?
what's the company that owns Corona?
Constellation Brands.
Yeah, Constellation Brands will buy those data sets that Google has collected data upon, and they'll probably say, well, since you like to smoke, you probably want to have a drink with this.
Word.
Why not buy a Corona with some lime in it? And we have the good brother Judge Zilla on the platform for the first time.
Yo, peace.
Long time listener, first time
Contributor.
Yeah, I hope you're sober this time around, bro. I heard you on that Saturday panel.
Wait, what?
Judge Zilla.
Oh, I don't know if his mic's working. We can't hear him.
Oh, hey, sorry about that. I didn't realize you were talking to me. I had to click back in and come back, go back out, and go back in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Peace, brother.
Hey, that's you kind of hit on what I was going to jump on here about when you were talking about the Google Health and then the link to, right, because they don't need to identify who you are, right? They don't need your email. They don't need, right? They just need the router numbers and IPNs from where you're transmitting and from the devices that are in the same areas those things. So proximity is going to identify you. It's not about who you are as an individual. It's about what you are as a commodity of informational project. So just like you're saying with, let's see, Google has these Google's going to have this, which I think has potential for violating HIPAA, but if they got lobbyists to get past HIPAA, all right. And now you need, you like to smoke instead of drink. You like to drink instead of smoke. You like Sominex. You like, and all of these things, right? They're getting Amazon and Google are soon. Probably Google's going to tie in with more with Walmart and the prescription game. You know, these all of these things that come in, all these that are setting up, right? All these companies that are setting up having these alternative means of use besides what their principal statements of why they're putting these things together.
Mhm.
You know, it's I, I I didn't want to argue with antitrust before, but I do understand because I like to be a laissez-faire capitalist, but it's these tentacles are stretching are seeming to stretch way too long.
This is where Andrew Yang is going with his platform.
Yeah.
We also have Dr. Phoenix on the platform. What's going on, bro?
Yo, what's going on?
Good. How you gentlemen doing tonight?
Chilling,
Good,
man,
good.
chilling.
Yeah, I this is interesting that you have this article. I've been talking about this man since I think practically the very first panel I came on. Part of this isn't just the fact that Google, Ascension, where I'm at, Ascension is actually one of the largest healthcare organizations in my state and in general in the region as a whole. So I mean, they're inking this deal with Ascension, but before that, Google had inked a deal. Google also has a partnership with the NIH, and if folks aren't familiar with the NIH, the NIH has their own hospitals as well. Again, this is how they do a lot of their research too, through their various schools. But part of this deal includes the NIH and Google jointly training data scientists and folks of that nature and stuff like that. But just in general, if they get an access to millions upon millions of folks who utilize Ascension, think about how many folks they're getting access to through the NIH.
Oh, that's the other thing I was going to say is with the teledocs, right?
Yeah,
the teledocs and the online pharmacies.
Yeah.
I mean, so what we're seeing here. I mean, I think for the most part, people that pretty much everyone has a Google account, email account, whatever. But this is what we're seeing, just sort of the invasiveness, and it was going to eventually go to here anyway. But I mean, you're seeing that there's no escaping where the trends are headed in healthcare, and just certainly with the incorporation of AI and machine learning, all these various entities into the healthcare sector. So I mean, this is something I've been talking about, and I'm not really surprised at this deal that Google has with Ascension, because I also believe was it Microsoft partner with one of the other EHR organizations. I can't remember.
I think it was Epic.
It might be Epic, because again, Ascension is a major player where I'm at. In fact, one of the hospitals I worked at was they were part of the largest healthcare group in my state that was brought out by Ascension about 2-3 years ago. So I mean, Ascension is very far reaching, if you will.
Yeah. Health information systems, data science, health and IT. This is all going to be major. I don't live too far away from Athena Health, which is another major player.
Oh yeah. Very
in EMR. And I live probably about 20 minutes away from Meditech, which is down the street in Canton. So I'm surrounded by major institutions that are involved in healthcare that are not, they're not letting their foot off the throttle at all.
Well, I think part of the problem is that for a while, Google has really been failing in the wearable space. They haven't really gotten any traction with their Google Watch or their Watch OS platform. Basically it's pretty much been, like Fitbit, obviously Apple, and then Samsung.
Apple's got way more traction.
Samsung has the vast majority of the market by far. And then I think the next one was, I want to say maybe Samsung or Fitbit. I can't remember which one. But I mean, by far Apple has the majority. So I mean, these partnerships that we're seeing popping up, at least on behalf of, at least with the to the benefit of Google, is because for the most part that their wearable platform has not been as robust, and really they've kind of let it languish for a few years, to be honest.
Well, Dr. Phoenix, I think a lot of that has to do with the hardware, especially on the wearables devices that monitor health. The new Series 6 watches, the Apple watches, the heart monitoring capability on those watches. I mean, literally, it has like, protective algorithms in it. That's how good it monitors all of your
vitals.
Yeah, all
Well,
your
yeah,
vitals.
because these algorithms, specifically what Apple uses with their EKG built into their Series 6 watches, is that those had to be FDA approved. And so again, Apple partnered with the American Heart Association. So
Right.
the current president of the American Heart Association, ironically enough, is a brother. He's a cardiologist, but they partner with them to get sort of so that they can test it out, so that they can work with physicians and in that area, and then eventually they were able to submit this for through the FDA and get that approved. But yeah, so I mean, and also in fact Google is also a part of some of the very first what was it, oh my god, ophthalmology, retina scanning based, oh my god, I can't think of the name now. But anyhow, they were part of some of the very first machine learning data algorithms that were approved up through the FDA were specifically targeting ophthalmology and retinal scanning and diabetic retinopathy. That's what it was.
Yep. And
those were the first ones.
yeah, the Apple Watch is actually the only wearable that actually can give a more accurate reading of melanated people, because the sensor works the best with the darker pigmentation of Black people.
Actually, that's a very good point. That is a very good point, because I know that was something that Google has been trying to work on, and I know that's something they've trying to work on that with the NIH and some other organizations to try to get, obviously more accurate algorithms that can accurately reflect, Black people and melanated people in general.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in tying in these advancements, these companies these startups and these mergers that we've been referencing on these things on this channel, on this topic right now, and then and then connecting this to part of the talking points that I came in on, referencing Andrew Yang, and the technocratic. So. And I just got here literally 10 minutes before I popped on. So has the conversation gone to the realm of the potential of, because again, they've just lobbied past HIPAA. My cursory understanding of HIPAA, Google just lobbied past HIPAA.
Well, I don't think HIPAA's framework is keeping up with the emerging of the technology.
Actually, that's a very good point, because I talked about this briefly, but you have one of the most ambitious programs of research that's currently underway right now. I talked about this through the precision medicine initiative that Obama signed into that he signed with his executive order. And so again, and one of the things that came out of that is was the All of Us program. And so one of the things that they're having issues with is keeping up with the what you call it, oh my
HIPAA?
God. Yeah, it's HIPAA, but it's informed consent. Yes, excuse me, informed consent.
There you go.
Oh, informed consent. Okay.
Yeah, so this is one of the major issues that's becoming a problem, because again, the part of this research program, this is one of the most ambitious research programs since the Human Genome Project.
Right.
And so the aim and the target of this program is to get Black folks specifically involved in genetic research. And so one of the issues that's been a major issue, at least especially in my area, has been sort of dealing with informed consent, because I mean, again, you're dealing with folks who are submitting biological samples, physiological samples, and stuff like that. And so, you know, you're gonna have that stuff moving around between different entities. And so ultimately, you know, it is going to become an issue about as to who gets access to what and for what.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep.
And on top of that, right, just to muddy I'm sorry guys, I'm just going to muddy the waters deeper. On top of that, right, okay, so we know our data is not safe. We know our data is not safe. You cannot, in this day and age, you cannot be under the impression, the illusion that your data is safe.
It actually
is breached.
It actually should be under the Fourth Amendment, the right to privacy. So
right, but we know it's not safe. All the data breaches, all the information that's available out there, having a localized institution, be a cloud-based, right? Because cloud-based just means another computer somewhere else, right?
Yep.
So it's going to get you have to prepare for the inevitable. The data is going to be breached. The data is going to be out there. Now, if follow me just in the trail a little bit here, if we can conflate blockchain, which is an existing uncontrolled, I don't know if I should say uncontrolled or unregulated.
No, decentralized
ledger, right? So it's a permanent record, right? Blockchain is a permanent record. So are we on the cusp of the point to say, with the nexus of all these things coming together, to saying that privacy laws may have to be revisited, privacy laws may go by the wayside because there's not an availability to uphold them?
I think, well, you know, I think the and I get where you're going with this, and I think what we're actually looking at here is so by definition, for example, right, the technology complies with the regulations. The problem is the regulations don't take into account technological advancement.
Not fast enough, right?
And that's exactly the problem, because again, you're gonna have people's information that is going to be moved around to different entities. And so again, you know, the major issue is going to always be who is going to have access to your information at any given time for what reason.
So, you know, piggybacking on the Andrew Yang thing, which is part of what he says, but he doesn't go that deep into it on his sites and in some of his talks. But if he has long enough time, he will.
But he can't.
Should we be thinking of eliminating the privacy component and just commoditizing or monetizing our data, personal information, realizing that the ability for the protections of privacy in that manner are inevitable. The failure of them is inevitable, and that data is going to be used, I won't say against you, but in support of these other endeavors.
Well, to let Andrew Yang propose it, yeah. Sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
Well, he's a lobbyist at this point for the big tech companies, anyways. I mean, obviously he's a technocrat, but in cybersecurity, what we try to do is mask all the sensitive information so that even if the bad guys do get it, it's of no use to them. So, you know, the GDPR forces companies who hold your data, at least in terms of the Europeans, that data has to be protected in a way that is not usable outside of the confines of whoever is holding it. And if the user, the person who data that you collected, requests to have that data terminated, you have, as a company, you have to uphold that. So for a lot of these tech companies now, and we have MDPR here in Massachusetts, Massachusetts Data Protection Regulation. California has their own framework, as well as New York and New Jersey.
And GDPR is the right to be forgotten, right?
GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation. So how they handle user data. Okay. This is going to be important down the line. All the states would have to come on board because the federal government does not have the capability of coming up with a top-down framework, because each state handles their people differently, their rights differently.
Yeah, actually, to highlight what Mike was just saying. So depending on what your information, for example, if you submit a biological sample or physiological sample, depending on how that's used, it may fall under. Obviously, it's going to fall under the broader umbrella of HIPAA, but depending, let's say if it's for genetics research, so there's a specific act that governs the access to your genetic information. So it's called GINA, which stands for the Genetic Information Non-Disclosure Act. And so this was developed years ago to address the fact that in genetic research that you can have someone submit a blood sample, for example, and that blood sample can be passed around, can be used for all different kinds of, for different entities, for different research purposes. And so again, so when you think about what happens with just sort of the broader scope of when you're looking at protecting patient privacy, for example, under HIPAA, but then you have all these sort of subcategories depending on how your data, how your biological data, your physiological data, not just sort of the physical and biographical data is being used, but if it's biological data, how that gets used within the system. And so you have these other acts or these other umbrellas in which that are allegedly designed to protect your information, in which it falls under as well. So just something to keep in mind.
And Facebook does not want to get sanctioned again on billion. Them and Google don't want to spend billions of dollars paying out to these government institutions because they lost someone's data. So there's going to be an urgency on their behalf to actually come in compliance with this. Unfortunately, the United States, we don't have, out of the 50 states, only like maybe 16 states have some form of data protection regulation involved. In Massachusetts, if you're a company that loses patient data or user data within your possession, you have to pay up to $50,000 per record. When Equifax lost all those records, the first state to take them to task was Massachusetts, and then New York, and then New Jersey. So in Massachusetts, $50,000 a record times 143 million records could have bankrupted the company.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, we're entering a slippery slope or gray area whenever you start to deal with sort of people's health information and even biological information, physiological information, and how that gets used and how that gets classified. Because again, categorized. Because I mean, you have various different acts acts that are designed to allegedly protect your information. But again, depending on how that's used within a particular area or system, I mean, it can be somewhat dubious. And there's a lot of gray area, especially in the informed consent. I mean, it can be informed consent, but you can undergo a surgical procedure, and people can take tissue samples then when you're under the knife during surgery, and you'll never know.
Yeah, that's and then one of my concerns with that, as a situation is unfortunately our what do you call them, legislators just don't seem to have the slightest idea of the slightest inkling of technological knowledge.
And that's where guys like Andrew Yang come in.
There you go.
He wants to be that tech consultant for the federal government and consult and have them pay him to consult as a lobbyist. Not that he's a bad person. I don't know him all that well, but he talks just like a technocrat anyways. And we're moving into the technocratic stage of society with all this automation coming in and artificial intelligence and whatnot. You're gonna need privacy lawyers.
Right. It's scary to think that the people coming up with the laws for things are the people who still slap their TV when it's acting up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not actually those people who are actually writing the laws. Okay, well, it's their campaign contributors who write the laws. Mm-hmm. They sign them in. They sign the laws in, right, and enact them without really combing through the details and understanding the impacts of such.
That's a more thorough explanation of what I was trying to say.
But I hate to throw that. I hate to throw this wrench in there, but I know you guys are talking at a high level, but you can, I mean, there are ways to protect your data at a lower level than that. Nobody's holding a gun to your head to say, post you went to X, Y, and Z restaurant and posting pictures of your location and all that stuff. Nobody's holding a gun to give you. You're basically handing over all your digital information to these big companies.
Well, that's only one half of it, Josh. So yeah, geolocation tracking, shared data tracking, that's one half. But the static data that cannot change, such as your birthday, your social security number, so on and so forth, that information is the most critical because it's static. All the rest of the data you can scrub and sanitize that data, but you cannot sanitize your social security number. You don't have those 3 pieces of information, man. You're screwed. You're nobody here. I've seen people lose their data, their PII, and have credit cards ran up in their name and whatnot, and they have to fight, an uphill battle just to retain, get that information back.
Well, it's even more dubious in health systems because not only do they have access to that biographical data, like your date of birth, social security number, but also understand you kind of sort of implicitly give permission whenever you go see your, let's say, your primary care provider for, your annual checkup or whatever. If they take your blood pressure, maybe they might, take some blood samples or whatever just to, check whatever they're checking. But, you kind of implicitly give permission for that. Mm-hmm. So you never ask what happens after all that happens, after they get that biological data, that those biological samples. Mm-hmm. You never ask about it. So it's not just necessarily that folks are getting access to, like, your social security number, date of birth, and that stuff. Is really more or less, we can, and this has certainly been an issue. And 60 Minutes did a segment on this some years ago, talking about how biotech companies, they can get your biological data. So let's say they got a blood sample, they can isolate various genes in your when they do a genome profile for you.
That's not protected
at all. They can isolate genes and then patent those genes, even though those genes may be specific to you, and then turn around and develop medications out there. Actually, there's a very well-known medication, a cardiac medication that was developed a few years ago, specifically targeted at African Americans. I would just advise people to go Google this, and they use, and the basis for that, they use Black people as research to develop this.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of like HeLa cells, right?
Yes. Well, here's the thing about HeLa cells. Everyone uses HeLa cells. It's not just everyone uses it. You could be sitting in a lab and at your university or whatever, working on with some cells. They're all HeLa cells. Every single lab that works with anything biological, where you're growing stuff, is using some type of cell or whatever. They're all HeLa cells. Every single one. All of it.
But then that's the thing what you're talking about. Like, okay, that came from a person.
Yeah. And that's where the informed consent comes into play. Remember, they got samples from her when she underwent the surgery.
Right.
That's how they got the samples when she was going through surgery for the cancer.
Yep. So
that's what I was just saying earlier about, you can undergo a surgical procedure and they can get samples from you then. You'll never know.
Yep. All right, let me get you.
That's something to keep in mind, brothers.
Yeah, and Dr. Phoenix has been talking about this for quite some time, probably since the summer. That this is where healthcare is moving into, telemedicine and so on and so forth. The data and the application aspect is going to be a big driver. Amazon just now got into healthcare. They have their own pharmaceutical company coming to compete with the big boys like CVS and.
If it goes the way Amazon wants this to go, Amazon will completely rewrite how the pharmaceutical industry functions.
Mm-hmm.
And they at least the way they administer and distribute medications to people.
Yeah.
If it goes the way that they want it to go.
Yeah. All these robots that they have, because they bought Kiva Systems, which is a robotic company here in Massachusetts. They bought them. and basically created Amazon robots. And you factor in their ability to leverage that infrastructure that they've already had for pharmaceutical distribution. It's going to be nuts. Especially, we covered an article last week with UPS delivering their first drone for dropping parcels with CVS.
Well, yeah, and one of the largest complaints I've heard from pharmacists and pharmacy techs is just the workload demand. We look back there, we don't see them doing much, but they're doing it constantly. Just to try to keep up with demand, because the numbers specifically at places like Walmart, Sam's Clubs, and those high volume distributors. Yeah.
All right, let me get to this next article. I'm going to breeze through these next couple ones. All right,
Okay.
this one's from hackaday.com. Credit card skimmers evolve, shimmers are here. Credit cards are loaded with security features, but the game of cat and mouse goes on. Nefarious syndicates continue to develop technologies to steal data in new and innovative ways. After SparkFun did a teardown of some illicit hardware, they were visited by local law enforcement who requested their help once more. From SparkFun refers Nick from SparkFun refers to the device in question as a shimmer. It's intended to be installed inside the chip reader of a credit card terminal and between the terminal and the user's credit card. Fabricated on a flexible film PCB, it's thin enough to glue inside without being obvious, even during maintenance. The investigation begins with identification of the major components on board, followed by attempts to communicate with the device. Unfortunately, the hardware was largely unresponsive, even when connected to a card reader. In an effort to learn more, a schematic was produced. Nick's analysis raised more questions than answers, and the suspicion is that the hardware may have been damaged at some point. However, the basic capabilities of the device are obvious, given the ability of the hardware to interact with a card via its contacts and offload the data through the onboard radio module. Thanks to people like Nick and earlier work from SparkFun, we all now have a better understanding of the risk when using payment terminals out in the wild. Unfortunately, unless your local gas station is willing to let you spend 20 minutes disassembling their card reader before paying, there's not a whole lot the individual can do about it. Stay vigilant if you got skinny on a skimmer. So
use cash.
Well, not just use cash.
Go inside and use the POS system inside at the counter.
Or that could be just as bad.
That's what I'm saying. That's what they're saying right here.
Yeah, I think the problem is that the problem is that we don't know who's behind the maintenance on these these point of sale systems. And yeah, the system might have been set up initially, but this becomes a supply chain attack. And cybersecurity, going from one, your supply chain vendor and so on and so forth, have to go through a risk assessment. We don't know who's behind the packaging on these point of sale systems. And so these shimmers get popped onto there because bad guy is working for bad guy cyber gang, and they have a vested interest in making sure that every single point of sale that leaves that facility has that shimmer on there, and it's a multi-level attack.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I thought this was more of like a pay at the pump situation, but you're saying, okay.
Yeah, this is big time. This isn't some, a couple of guys in his mom's basement, hacking. No, this is
somebody. You're saying the possibility of somebody who works for Diebold.
This is a criminal organization, cyber criminal organization at its finest.
Yep.
Type of stuff that we've run into. Yep.
Yeah, the mob. They finance some of this type of stuff. I was watching a documentary a while back, and this kind of ties to this. This is what they were doing before, but they used tools or whatever to hack into point of sale systems to eventually get into the bank. Figure out how to get into the actual bank. And they were actually going around pushing a button, basically. And they had the guys, it was organized. They had the guys that would go to the specific ATM at the specific time that they set the logic bomb or whatever you want to call it to go off, and it'll dump out all the money. So I mean, it's like a cat and mouse game. Every time new technology comes out, I was reading an article not that long ago about everybody got the chip now. Well, they found vulnerabilities in that where they can get around that and get your information.
And again, I guess to me, in my mind, that takes me back to the circle. How tied to it, or how strongly tied are we going to be to the privacy of our personal data? You know, it's because again, there's the security. I hate to keep harping on this, but the security, it's a cat and mouse game that's virtually never ending, because you always are going to have a percentage of the population that are bad actors.
Well, it's also major organizations that have been hit by the drug trade. They can't sell drugs anymore, so going into cyber criminal operations is their next lucrative income. So it's not so much as bad individual actors, but more about the organizations, because they're going to work together. The cartels in Mexico and Latin America are heavily invested in this type of stuff, in actually cyber weapons of mass destruction. They're paying for this type of stuff. They got the money to pay for it. So if they want to attack individuals in law enforcement, or even a law enforcement agency, especially these low-level ones across the border, New Mexico and so on and so forth, if they need to dox these guys, they got the money to pay for it. They want to dox these officers who are working along the border, find out who their family is. That information is widely available. If you're gullible enough to put on Facebook, I'm a police officer, and here's my daughter, and here's my son, and here's my dog, and your geolocation is all being shared.
Well, they put the decals on their own trucks, so they're not.
Well, not just that, but let's say I'm a cyber criminal, and I run an organization, and I also have, consultants that are basically traveling back and forth, talking with cartels. There's multi levels to all of this type of stuff, and organ trafficking. So now, I'm a cyber criminal organization. I have all this big data that I just siphoned off of some hospital or something like that. I can find out the next Black boy who's genetically superior to many in his region, in his location. I want his heart, I want his lungs, so on and so forth. Cartel sells it on the black market, sells it in China, sells it in Israel, get millions of dollars in profit. It's the most lucrative criminal act right now is organ trafficking and health data, EMRs, because those two things are static. They cannot be changed. So it's a very multi-billion-dollar industry right now.
Yep, and just throw this out there as well. They also do those pump and dump schemes.
Whoa, pump and dump.
Yeah, not the one you're thinking. The pump and dump, they basically where dollar will at, because they
you're talking about penny stocks. Yeah.
I thought you were about Tinder.
They'll send out these they'll send out these phishing emails. To any and everybody, trying to get them to purchase. Oh, we got this stock is going to skyrocket or whatever, and that's all backed by these mafioso or whatever. And they fund it and pump up the damn stock by doing all these phishing campaigns, by getting people to purchase the stock and then sell out. And sell out before it crashes. Sorry about that. I think I went out for a second.
Yep. Let me get to this next article real quick. This one is from bigthink.com. Scientists find a new way to measure gravity. I'm gonna fly right through this. You drop something and it falls. That's how you know where is gravity, right? Scientists at the University of California, Berkeley, improve upon this age-old test to find new and potentially more useful ways to measure gravity using lasers suspending atoms in midair. The usual approach to measuring gravity involves making something fall, preferably in a long shielded tube or tower, and then measuring it as it flies by with an instrument. While this classic method connects to our everyday experience of gravity, it has limitations. For one, the opportunity to understand gravitational effects is very brief during such a test. There are also other forces like magnetic fields at play, possibly affecting the results. What the researchers figured out is a process that starts by releasing a cloud of cesium atoms in a small chamber. Then they use flashing lights to split some of them into superposition states. Once the atoms were taken apart in this way, lasers were employed to keep them in a fixed position. One atom in each pair was suspended a few micrometers higher than the others. This allowed the scientists to measure the wave-particle duality of each atom's wave as it was being affected by gravity. Wave-particle duality is the quantum mechanics idea that every particle can act as a particle or wave. Measuring differences in duality between the atoms in a pair with each one being at a varying distance from Earth allowed the researchers to quantify the effects of gravity on the atoms. The advantage of this technique is that it can potentially help gather a lot of new information with implications for a wider range of fields, even this research for dark matter. Not having the atoms zipping through the air aids in the collection of significantly more precise measurements of gravity, as well as the gravitational attraction between objects more. It is also easier to protect these much smaller measuring devices from interfering magnetic fields. Another cool thing, this type of approach makes it easier to create portable gravity measuring devices. That way, they can be taken to different places on Earth to look for mineral deposits for improved mapping. It's pretty interesting, to say the least.
So they're looking at measuring gravity by the particle wave theory and by the particle and the wave theory, like so the quanta packets. They're also looking at gravity from a standpoint of a wave. So that's kind of how they're looking to measure it from both sides. Is that it?
That's what it sounds like.
It's deep. Still, we haven't gotten a tremendous answer as to what exactly gravity is, besides Einstein's explanation of what gravity is. Well.
All right, let me get to this next one from physics.org. Physics experiment with ultra-fast laser pulses produces a previously unseen phase of matter. Adding energy to any material, such as by heating it, almost always makes it structure less orderly. Ice, for example, with its crystalline structure, melts to become liquid water with no order at all. But in new experiments by physicists at MIT and elsewhere, the opposite happens. When a pattern called a charge density wave in a certain material is hit with a fast laser pulse, a whole new charge density wave is created, a highly ordered state instead of the expected disorder. The surprising finding could help to reveal unseen properties in material of all kinds. The discovery is being reported today in the journal Nature Physics in a paper by MIT professor Nu Jidik and Pablo Herrero, postdoc Ansar Hugar, graduate student Alfred Zong, and 17 others at MIT, Harvard University, SLAC National Accelerator Laboratory, Stanford University, and Argonne National Laboratory. The experiments made use of a material called lithium tritelluride, which naturally forms in itself into a layered structure. In this material, a wave-like pattern of electrons in high and low density regions forms spontaneously, but is confined to a single direction within the material. But when hit with an ultra-fast burst of laser light, less than a picosecond long, or under 1/1,000,000th of a second, that pattern, called a charge density wave or CDW, is obliterated, and a new CDW at right angles to the original pops into existence. This new perpendicular CDW is something that has never been observed before in this material. It exists only for a flash, disappearing within a few more picoseconds. As it disappears, the original one comes back into view, suggesting that its presence had been somehow suppressed by the new one.
You know, that makes me think about being able to phasing technology, being able to possibly take something with one density, move it through the density of another object and not disrupt it. So you could actually maybe move an article through a wall or something else like that.
Or teleportation.
Or teleportation, or either way, you can start moving stuff. I don't know, almost like it's almost like interdimensionally. I don't know, but certainly phasing through a wall, or possibly even putting somebody in a teleporting system. Seems like this is all, you know, where you hear about, you know, people walking through walls and all this kind of stuff. I mean, which is science fiction. This looks like this could become fact at some point in time.
All right, next one is from Engadget.com.
Beat me up, Scotty.
Oh, who's that?
Beat me up, baby.
Oh, I thought you guys were trying to get.
Beat me up, Scotty.
Yeah, I thought you were trying to get on the panel for a second. I was like, I thought you was already on the panel. All right, this one's from Engadget.com. Japan's Hayabusa 2 is returning to Earth with asteroid samples. Over the past year and a half, JAXA's Hayabusa 2 spacecraft serves as an asteroid Ryugu's companion in the vast emptiness of space. It got close enough to fire bullets into the surface and even detonated bombs to disturb the ground and scoop up samples to take back home. Now the spacecraft and the samples it collected have started making their way back to Earth. Hayabusa 2 has left the asteroid on November 13th, 10:05 a.m. Japan time. It has captured photos of Ryugu as it moved away and will continue taking pictures of the asteroid over the next 5 days. The spacecraft will be flying away slowly, so the asteroid will be gradually getting smaller in the pictures, which will be regularly uploaded to JAXA's website. Ryugu is a carbonaceous near-Earth asteroid, and scientists are hoping that the samples it provided can give them more information on the origin and evolution of the inner planets. More importantly, they are hoping these samples can help shed light on the origin of water and organic compounds, hence the origin of life on Earth. When Hayabusa 2 gets near enough our planet in December 2020, it will drop the samples in sealed containers. They are expected to re-enter this atmosphere and land in Australia, while the spacecraft heads to new asteroid targets. Interesting stuff. We talked about this on Black Gnostics Hangout on Saturday night, that the cost for a space startup is going to be so significantly lower that it's going to be really wide open in the next 10 years. So
right.
Go ahead, Judge.
Well, no, I think I was there for that too. I've had a lot of downtime lately, but that downtime has fortunately turned into uptime. Yeah, to me, I read that article, and the previous two articles make me feel like how much of a gorilla I really am. But with the understanding of the science that was being talked about there, so cursory. But with this looks like a glowing and flowing and esoteric reading of, gentlemen, we have just started astro mining.
Yeah. This is a open market now. I mean, you got blockchain, you got artificial intelligence, you got cloud computing. You have all the resources necessary to actually spin up your own startup. Before, if you wanted to get into this sort of arena 25 years ago, you would have had to spend at least a couple $1 million on a data center to process this information. It didn't talk about, you know, fast computing and stuff like that. Now you can go to AWS and spin up, you know, some servers in some instances for a couple $100. This was unheard of 25 years ago, back in the early 2000s. That was unheard of.
No, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It's the barriers for entry as all this technology intersects with Moore's law. Each individual form of technology intersects with Moore's law, and the creating discounts that happen from it. It's I don't know what, nobody knows what it's going to mean, but it's not business as usual. We'll say that any longer. There is so much realm for the introduction of variable. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we covered. Let me pull it up so that people understand what I'm talking about. And maybe Judge might not know what I'm talking about, but cube-based satellites. Share this with a screen. So, Judge, this is what I was referring to Saturday. These things can be built right out of parts from Home Depot and things electronics you can find at Radio Shack, if there was a Radio Shack left. And the cost is only like $1,000 or something like that for something like this, maybe even less.
Yeah, it's I'm a low-level business guy, and when I went to university, I took the soft science of economics. Right? The good thing about being taking up economics as a soft science is because no other economist agrees with you. You're all right. you can still put forth your arguments, but these harder sciences and the resulting fruits of the labors. My goodness.
Yeah,
most of what I work with is the psychology of getting somebody the psychology of getting somebody to purchase to participate with my service or my goods. The scale of some of it really does make me realize how much of a gorilla I am.
Yes. Yeah, I think we're all pretty much digital apes over here. I'm trying to draw this picture so that some people can understand that we're not that far off from competing in these areas. Before it was a whales game, a super whales game, for that matter. Now, all you little gillfish, all you little sunfish, man, it's open now. You can actually compete in these areas. I plan on competing in these areas, at least this particular area. I think there's a perfect opportunity to jump into something like this. When
you were on the program, I think we were both on that panel. I think you had to step off for a reason, but I kind of reiterated that. I'm like, and then again, the implications, right? I believe that that was a gilded way of saying we've started extraterrestrial mining. I believe that's what that article was to say.
Yep.
And the implications of that, meaning depending what's available, right? Because every element that's available on Earth is available everywhere. And part of the research is saying that many of the veins of these minerals or deposits, solid, close proximity deposits of these minerals are the resultants of impacts. So the ability to come up with enough of any particular mineral, but especially precious minerals, uh, from an exterior or extraterrestrial source, has potentially shattering economic consequences for, which means other things will have to other methods of economy will have to be considered.
Yep.
So it's just wow.
Yep. Yeah, I think you know, Virgin has one of the most efficient ways of launching a satellite, which is right off the belly of a Boeing Dreamliner. As you see right here, the most cost-effective way of doing it. I mean, you could take a jetliner like this and fly it from any major international airport and get your satellite back into orbit in just a matter of a couple of hours at fraction of the cost. You know,
Yeah,
20,
like
25, 30 years ago, that was unheard of.
like just as simply as we take in-air refueling. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think DE Raptor has said these planes can get up to damn near 50, 60,000 feet at 500, 700 miles an hour. That sucker's already at a strong pace. I just think that there's so many opportunities that can come out of this, man. These Q-based satellites, these air launch vehicles like this.
Right. Well, and there is so much, right? This is first wave.
Mm-hmm.
This is first wave. This is Wright brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And you can launch right off, like off of an aircraft that's really right up there, you know, in the upper stratosphere, where you can just take right off and go right into space very easily.
Mm-hmm.
Very easily.
This is
That's
first wave. This
cost-effective.
is still using chemically pressurized fuel,
Mm-hmm.
liquid
Right.
fuel. This is first wave. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's actually pretty, you know, in some ways, depending on as we move further into, let's say, fusion technology and that kind of thing, where we have different types of engines. This is relatively low tech if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and on top of that, right? Okay, so like I said, I believe that article means we're into extraterrestrial mining, which is one of the basic steps that we need to create, you know, if you know, to get enough material to create elevator, you know, just for instance, the elevator, right? The elevator concept from the elevator from Earth to Moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the ability, even still using our phase energy sources, to make it that much more economical in a much more efficient environment to be able to use them off of the lower impact of gravity, right? Oh, I'm not smart. I'm not smart enough to keep up with the thoughts in my head. That's part of the problem.
I mean, Elon Musk is no astronaut or no astrophysicist, but you know, he had an idea, and this is the way they moved. I don't see why we can't think the same way. All right, this next article is from futurism.com. According to a shocking report by NASA scientists, blood flow can stop and even reverse in the upper bodies of astronauts. The study could have some major implications about prolonged trips through deep space, as we're still trying to nail down the exact effects of spending long periods in microgravity. The study looked at periodic ultrasound tests of 11 healthy astronauts who staffed the International Space Station. The results were alarming. Blood flow had either stagnated or reversed in the left internal jugular vein, a major blood vessel on the side of the neck, in 7 crew members. The tester also found a clot and a partial clot in 2 of the crew members after their return to space. This was an unexpected finding. Michael Stegner, a senior author and manager at NASA's Johnson Space Center, told CNBC News, "We did not expect to see stasis and reverse flow. That is very abnormal. On Earth, you would immediately suspect a massive blockage or a tumor or something like that. And that could save And that could have some very serious effects on astronauts' health. If you get a clot in the internal jugular vein, the clot could travel to the lungs and cause a pulmonary embolism. That's very dangerous. A professor of medicine at the Johns Hopkins University, Andrew Feinberg, told CNBC. So
it's called a pulmonary embolism.
Any sort of ideas of going to Mars and and being select up there is not, it's not the business.
Wow, that's pretty scary.
I don't know. I think they're gonna have to send robots, not just wheeled robots. I mean, robots with legs and stuff like that to see how they move around on the planet.
Yeah,
there's a lot of theories of how the dirt or the surface is, but there's no real true indication of how a human-like person would actually move up there. You can simulate all day that you want to, but you gotta put boots on the ground up there, or at least robot feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I think I mentioned earlier this week, every phalanx has a front line.
Mm-hmm.
The odds aren't good. The odds aren't usually good for those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Man. Pulmonary embolisms. Wow, that's pretty dangerous. So putting someone to sleep, they're gonna have to have a whole. I know that that's a technology we will ultimately be able to cross at some point in time, but we might have to have some changes within the human body itself. That's what I'm thinking. If you're really going to get out there and mess around in this space, we may have to change some functionality of the human body itself to function out there. I don't know if we can do that through micro technology or I this be very. I don't know, but that there is a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big hurdle, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking I'm right there with you. I'm thinking that there are going to be like the people that go up there initially are CRISPR people.
Yeah.
Well, in general, when you're flying in general, deep vein thrombosis also.
Deep vein thrombosis, yep.
Yeah, DVTs and PEs are always going to be a problem again.
Yeah.
Especially if you for folks who do like international flights, just sitting down, which is why it's recommended if you're doing anytime you're taking any type of long flight, you need to get up, walk around, or you wear compression stockings.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are common issues related to just flight in general that people develop this because obviously you're not using these parts of your body, you're not moving around a lot, and certainly in space you have a lot of weightlessness and stuff like that. So
yeah. Big challenges. You got to somehow be able to artificially recreate an active Earth environment on that spacecraft as you're traveling. So
ironically enough, women are more susceptible to this than men, ironically enough.
One of the articles we read before earlier this year was that they found people with, their herpes were flaring up in space, man. A little bit of microgravity and some dom game, man. People coming back with herpes, man. It was crazy, man. Like, how'd you get that? Went raw, dog. Crazy.
That went raw. Yeah. It's 0G.
The dark side of the moon is dark for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Micro G and Tom game. No.
Yeah, man.
Oh man.
Health issues are going to be a major issue that needs to be tackled, especially considering that at least the human race has aspirations of moving to be space travelers and such like that. You're going to have to tackle some of the long-term issues that comes with long-term space travel. I mean, again, we see this with just astronauts being in space for a month or two at a time. So I mean, these are they come back with all kinds of issues. They get changes in bone density usually.
Yeah, you bone loss for sure.
Yeah, you get muscle wasting. So I
Yeah.
mean, all kinds of stuff. So I mean, there are a number of health issues that or that are associated with flight and especially space travel that will have to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So somehow we're gonna have to, mimic space. And I think, quite frankly, I think that's a secret for us being able to understand what gravity is, because if you can mimic a gravitational field inside of that craft and actually almost use that as a propulsion system as well, that would solve so many problems. You'd be able to travel, insanely fast, and you could have an environment inside of your craft that would be just like Earth. So some of those issues would be solved, but we haven't found out what the secret to what gravity really is. But man, that would answer a lot of questions if we really could do that.
Well, or like we were saying earlier with the other option, right? CRISPR people. I the two things that come to my mind are two, like one was a cartoon and one was a movie of extraterrestrials who arrived to the world, right, to the Earth. And I think I remember I think the cartoon, they were referenced as xenomorphs. This is late 80s, I think. Late 80s, possibly early 90s. They were like purple people, but their physiology was different, but they weren't the same physiology as the species that was on their home planet. Their physiology was changed to be able to endure the rigors of space travel.
Yeah.
And I think there was a corollary between both of those movies.
So in fact,
Or those,
they were creating another species in certain respects to deal with that, because if your physiology has changed from what your normal physiology is, then you are altered. You're a different species.
well,
Or maybe it's
genetically they were still the same. Genetically they still had the same. They were still of the same genetic material, but their physiology had been altered to the state where, like, they didn't look like the same thing.
They were kind of like albinos.
Well, no, well, they had a the reference that I'm giving. They had like two hearts. To have a stronger or whatever, for whatever reason that might be. Two hearts. 200 times the bone density. 300% of muscular density. That those types of things. So they had all of the things, all of the components of what their species was, but it was still altered. They were their species 2.0 ish. You know what I mean?
I mean, we talk about genetic alterations that have to maybe having to change, the travel and move in space, and so I mean, you have gene therapy, and there are a lot of things that possibly can be introduced to help maybe make these changes. Certainly, man's going to be able to do this in the future. Mm-hmm. We're definitely going to be able to do that, and I suspect that might be a part of the game. I don't know, unless we're able to somehow come up with a technology that it gets us to travel, huge distances in exceedingly short periods of time. I've heard some speculations on that as well, but I don't know how close we are to anything like that. But to travel at hyper speeds or warp space and time so ferociously, we can travel parsecs, and almost instantaneously. I don't know, it's a possibility, but all this is theoretical.
Right. At this point,
this biological piece, as far as traveling in space, that's a big barrier right there.
Well, but that being said, all of this is theoretical, and we just started moon mining, and that was theoretical 80 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, Einstein and them were talking about that, when he was, developing his unified field theory and all that. So, I mean, yeah, this has been talked about for over 100 years, but
I think Mike said something earlier that is very important. I mean, technology has advanced to the point now where, as a people, Black folks really don't have much of an excuse why you can't get involved in these various fields. I mean, technology has gained to the point to where it lowers the barrier to entry in terms of cost, knowledge. I mean, you could just learn specific things, and you can be very specialized in that one specific area, which will serve you just fine. I mean, it certainly wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to even consider that, in the next century, people may just be able to launch satellites out of their backyards. I mean,
that's for sure.
I mean, so in general, the barriers to entry to these various industries have certainly been lowered because of technology. And so, going forward, Black folks will, finally, get the damn hint if they want to survive and, and get involved in these various areas.
Well, the greatest barrier is the social network.
It is, but there was one guy already who created his own rocket, and he had a capsule, and he blasted off into space, and I think the name of the program was Black Sky, where this guy basically
I think he got hurt though. He got hurt pretty good.
He got quasi torn out the frame. That's for damn sure. Mm-hmm. But but homie had he had balls the size of cows, and he did it anyway.
Ironically, I believe he was a flat earther as well.
Well, he saw black. He saw Black Sky. He saw Black Sky. Yeah, I mean, so he had and this was a regular kind of regular guy. This was not a NASA, approved, project or whatever. This wasn't a guy who was a part of the, the Space Administration. This was just a smart dude who put together, a program, understood, how to put together a potential re-entry vehicle, if you will, and understood the basic physics of blasting off and getting into space and coming back down.
I mean, that's a very important point, because I think for Black folks, I think there's this belief that, oh well, you need all these elaborate materials and stuff. It's actually quite easy to make a proper propulsion system in your basement.
Yeah.
And even just providing even just the fuel source, the energy source you need to achieve escape velocity and such like that. You can, believe it or not, you can actually use something like candy bars. I won't give a lesson on that, but you can use something, everyday stuff you have around. Ammonia, chlorine, a lot of things. Basically, you just
fertilizer.
You need something that's an oxidizer for the most part, and you got a propulsion system.
Yep. Well, we're in the phase now that the tech, the PC world was when Steve Jobs and Wozniak was in their garage cooking up test beds. That was 40 years ago. We're in the same stage right now with homebrew space exploration. Big telescopes now that would have cost you, $100,000 25, 30 years ago. You can get those stuff on Amazon now for a couple $100.
Well, that being said, I just, because a lot of people are definitely going to see this, to push back just a little bit on Dr. Phoenix there, right? I remember an old surgeon telling me, no, surgery is easy. It's not hard to learn surgery. Surgery is easy when everything goes right. You go to the other 9 to 12 years of school to figure out what to do when things go wrong.
Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, the concept of producing a propulsion system. I mean, typically, you have something like peroxide, basically a hyperoxide, something that oxidizes. And so, I mean, this is just general chemistry 101. If you're taking general chem one or two, you already know this.
Yeah, we used to do this with liter bottles. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, everybody knows the famous videos with the Mentos and the soda and stuff. That's a very good example of that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a general chemist on BGS's hangout last night. Very interesting discussion over there.
But again, I got 140 on it. But
no, I got 0.041 on that one.
I mean, some of these successes, it's hard for me to reference them as successes and not failed suicides. She was a diesel scientist.
Oh yeah,
she was a diesel scientist.
A diesel scientist. She sure was.
85 octane.
85 octane. Yeah, man. And she was that shit was unleaded, bro.
Oh man.
You mean she was a petrochemical engineer? No, she was a diesel scientist.
Oh man.
Scientist, incredible. 140 IQ.
Oh, would you say, Dr. Phoenix?
I said, did she tell you how you get the octane rating?
I'm not really familiar with that.
Dude, she couldn't tell you what a valence ring was.
I can tell you what. She did tell us how many times her tank got filled up. I can tell you that for
sure. she did say how many licks on a wedding ring it takes to go back into prostitution.
Oh man, we gotta move on to the next article, man.
Let's do that.
Yeah. All right, this one is from Face to Face Africa. This 12-year-old Nigerian boy just made a new discovery in mathematics. A 12-year-old Nigerian has made history after making a new discovery in the field of mathematics. Chika Ofili, who is based in the UK, was awarded over the weekend at the True Little Hero Awards for discovering the new formula for divisibility by 7 in mathematics. Ofili's teacher, Miss Mary Ellis, who is also the head of the mathematics department at Westminster Under School, said he discovered the formula while solving a holiday assignment. Miss Ellis said in an educational journal that she gave a book called First Steps to Problem Solvers, published by UKMT, to study during the holidays. The book had several divisibility tests that used to quickly work out whether a number is exactly divisible by either 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 before you start dividing. This book had no memorable test listed for checking divisibility by 7. Ofili, however, discovered the formula and had an algebraic proof to back it up. The new formula involves taking the last digit of any whole number, multiply it by 5, and then add it to the remaining part of the number to get a new number. If this new number is divisible by 7, then the original number is divisible by 7. Another melanated hero crosses the finish line. It celebrates for us, man. I wish I had access to those sort of academic resources when I was his age. We had public schooling, and I can tell you right now, we didn't have any of that type of stuff.
Yeah, same reference I used the last time. You know, a lot of what separates us, from achieving as a social network.
Yeah, we're network poor.
Yeah,
because it's just not conducive to praising or elevating this type of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's also a function of the fact that if you given resources, you know, in this case, Black boys do extremely well when given proper resources.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I'm actually very impressed with what the young brother did. So, you know, not every day you hear this story.
You would think that HBCUs be knocking down his door saying, please come and enroll.
It's funny you bring that up, brother. I talked about this before, but there are a number of your Ivy Leagues, in particular, schools like MIT in your area, MIT.
Harvard.
They actually have recruitment programs, so they would get folks from the continent. These would be like their doctoral students, whatever. They actually have programs set up at these schools where they actually go back to their respective countries, and they actually recruit young people as for potential candidates for the programs for these schools. In fact, 60 Minutes did a segment on this a few years back that MIT had a very specific program, and so one of the gentlemen they were talking to was a young brother. I think he was from Nigeria or something, but he was in a doctoral program, and so he was actually going back to Africa. He was actually recruiting young black boys around this young brother's age, maybe a slightly
Yale's doing the same.
Yeah, slightly older.
Where they identify these people.
Yeah, and they will identify these folks as these are folks we need to have in our program, and they will come over here, and these folks will be great intellectual capital. Again, it contributes to the brain drain in Africa, but you would think that this is how schools like the Yales and the MITs or the Harvard, this is how they get their notoriety. This is how their programs get the prestige that they got, because they recruit the best and the brightest. Unfortunately, HBCUs have failed at this repeatedly. They do not do a great job at their graduate and doctoral levels of recruiting the best and the brightest folks. Because again, these are going to be your folks that are going to be writing these grants. They're going to be writing the grants that get monies to these various departments, and that's pretty much how these departments are judged, based on how much grant money you can pull in, based on how much these grad students and these doctoral students can pull in. So I mean, along with
I was going to say a lot of these HBCUs are undercapitalized. They don't have as much.
That's what I was going to go.
They get $1 billion every year, and they have to split that between 100 universities.
Also, one of my criticisms about HBCUs also has to be they actually have a kind of a crappy alumni network.
Well, and I was getting right there. God dang, you're taking all my points. That's what I was going to say is referencing MIT, Cal State, Yale. They have these huge endowment programs that HSBCUs don't have, because they have these endowments because they have these ridiculously strong alumni associations. On top of that, the amount of financial support that these universities give to their students is it creates that fuel to be loyal alumni,
and it goes into billions of dollars. So $1 billion that they give to HSBCUs, you're talking about one institution like a Harvard or a Yale, they have that alone themselves. They're cold. They're MIT. They got that. They're cold banging with that. That's lightweight with them. That's lightweight.
Yeah, it is ironic because even your major state schools, your Big Ten schools, they got endowments 10, 20, 30 times that of even your, I think the HBCU with the highest endowment is, I believe it's Howard. I think theirs around 600 some million, something like that.
Yeah.
But even you look at your Big Ten schools, at the bare minimum, they got at least $1 billion, and
yeah, they have that. I mean, pardon the pun, but they have that in spades. Yeah. They have the money, and that's where the HBCUs don't have it. I mean, why did Bill Cosby and them? Why they give so much money to the black schools? Because they were undercapitalized. I mean, schools like Lincoln University and others that really are are so undercapitalized, that they didn't have proper enough books to sell to students. And I mean, you don't have enough books. I mean, what are you talking about in your classroom? So I mean, you're dealing with limited dorm space, and I mean, they don't have enough developed dorms, where some of the dorms were like crumbling. I mean, where they were not in good,
I know folks right now.
Livable conditions. So I mean, it's they have challenges. It's a money thing.
Yeah, I knew folks at Howard that are at Howard right now. I knew some folks that went to Howard in the past, and some of the conditions they told me about the dorms were just absolutely insane. You know, roaches and rats in the dorms. I'm like, well,
Yeah, man. Rats sitting up at night, man, saying, "What's up? What's up, man? What you got for me tonight?" I mean, it's just wild. I mean,
They were a part of fraternity.
They're part of the fraternity, man.
That's the thing, though, because that kind of goes into a bit of my criticism about HBCUs as a whole, is that they do have these sort of not very good alumni networks. On top of it, you got a lot of these sororities, these fraternities that they're kind of leeches on the school because they're not really bringing anything into the school.
Well, I happen to know like Fisk University and so forth, Alpha Phi Alpha, my fraternity, and some of the others. They do give money to the endowments. They do, but you have to understand, to really function as a top-notch university, you need millions and millions of dollars. Millions of dollars, man. I mean, just to heat, a campus that may have, how many, 500 square yards or whatever, just to heat that can run you over $1 million. I mean, just basic functions, basic electric bill. I mean, just basic shit. So we're not even talking about, building new centers and keep. It's just, it's
you would
a
think
lot.
that they would be the perfect candidates for renewable energy tax incentives.
Yeah, but I think to Nagon's point, that they're so devoid of financing that even that is a massive expense in that regard.
They do have economic problems. I know Lincoln University and stuff, and I know some brothers who over there at New Chapter down there, and the undergraduates. We had we have an endowment with our fraternity where we give money to in our alumni association with the brothers. A lot of brothers donate, 100, 1,000, how much they can give a year. And that's broken up and given to various not only people on our campus, but for scholarship funds for other schools. And we work actually with the HBCUs out of Syracuse, which is really interesting. But it's a lot of money, and it's one thing you have people who are, donating, but the government, in my view, as far as schools are concerned, education of your youth, especially in higher education, they should be deeply involved with this, and you're getting little support from them. And those are the ones who have the deeper pockets. That's where we pay a lot of our taxes. We should have a lot more of that underwritten, to be quite frank with you. And that's not a handout, because you get a big return on educating your people. So that is a return. That's a capital investment.
Well, you get a return on the investment if the institution pursues areas of economic viability in their curriculum.
Well, the fact, if you have people who are coming out and they're engineers and so forth, and they're making good dollars, they can come back and consistently donate and help and build and work with the institutions. You should be getting a payback off of that, because these people are getting great jobs. They're becoming a big part of the system, and they'll have more dollars to donate and so forth. And it's you give to get back, and that's just kind of how that works. But we're not being perceived like that as much, and that's somewhat problematic. And we got to look at that, with Yale and Harvard and these other schools, what they get in their endowments. It's
right, that's what we're telling. That's what we're saying is those endowments right. There's federal funding, and then there's endowments. Endowments come from the alumni associations.
Yeah, they do, but some of that stuff gets underwritten by various groups in the government as well.
Well, it's tax. They're tax deductible. Yes, they are tax deductible. So there's an impetus on companies to be able to do that, and also put scholarships in their name at the universities and so forth. But again,
well, I mean, like I said, it's typical Black problems, if you will.
No, I would agree with what Nagon is saying. I do think as a collective, it is a Black issue, because again, if you're having these top tier white institutions that are poaching the best and the brightest minds from Black society, I mean, whether it's in the diaspora or even here within the states, I mean, again, this is lost opportunity on behalf of HBCUs and in general, just lost brain power for the collective. And so ultimately, I've spoken about this. I mean, even if you look at, for example, your medical schools, you have four major medical schools associated with HBCUs. So you have Meharry, and then Tennessee. You have
Okay.
Morehouse, Howard, and then you have Drew.
More, huh?
You have
Yeah.
uh oh my God, Drew, and is part of, technically is not really his own standalone. It kind of is, but it's really affiliated with UCLA. And so you have the Charles S. Drew School of Medicine, excuse me. And so,
Yep.
but essentially, you would think that there would be programs that would be targeted and tailored with them trying to establish, like, areas, rural medicine and stuff like that in places like in Africa. Like I said before, I've seen this certainly with the schools that I've known of, with folks that I spoke to from various medical schools, and especially with your Caribbean medical schools. A lot of them have programs where they send their students over there all the time to various places in Africa to do rural medicine. They work with surgeons. They're doing rural surgeries and stuff like that. So I mean, I do think as a whole, there's certainly some very big missed opportunities on behalf of the HBCUs. But also understand too that part is because of sort of the financing issues. But I think the financing issue with HBCUs is kind of a double-edged sword. I think part of it is that they've been starved from that through the government and various means like that. But also on the other end of that, I think there are also a lot of predatory things that happen within these various institutions that also contribute to many of the financial issues that we see today.
I would have thought that Bill Cosby's contribution in the '90s and the 2000s was a game changer for a lot of them. I guess that was not the case. So I thought enrollment went up with the Different World show.
It did. It did. It very much did. I mean, for the most part, I mean, HBCUs can damn near single-handedly thank Bill Cosby for even making it hip to go to an HBCU in the '90s.
People were rocking HBCU hoodies and never been to an HBCU.
Yeah.
People were
I'm
watching
guilty of that.
HBU hoodies who didn't know what HBU meant.
Yeah.
Well, I never went to one, but I had a Howard University hoodie. Remember the Black College Alliance
Yep.
joints? Remember
Yep.
those?
Yep.
Yeah, I had a Howard joint.
Yeah. I think I had a fist shirt or something like that back in the day. But
Yeah, I'm in like my fucking high school yearbook.
see, the way you would have fixed something like this was to create a sort of like an investment into the HBCUs to a lot of Black people who did not go. Instead of just buying the apparel, should have had it, kind of like an ETF.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. If you look at if you go to pretty much, you go to your states that have major cities with major Black populations, like for example in Illinois, you in Chicago specifically, you have the University of Illinois. Outside of HBCUs, University of Illinois graduates the most Black positions out here. But then if you look at some of the programs they have for like pre-med programs that they have at the University of Illinois Chicago, for example, there's at least 6 of them that I know of that actually start recruiting, that actually start with introducing folks as young as middle school to medicine.
Right.
And so,
Right.
again, I know Morehouse has similar programs. I do know that for a fact that they do that. I'm not so sure about Howard or maybe even Tuskegee or some of these other spots. But however, if you go to you go to any of your states with major Black populations in their major cities, typically you'll see similar programs from the big state universities, for example, and even from the private ones. I mean, the University of Chicago has some, but typically, they're very highly selective. Even where I'm at now, they have the medical schools where I'm at now. They have a couple programs that are targeted at high schoolers and middle schoolers as well. And so, but as a whole, what happens typically, especially for students now that are looking to go to college, is that, and I hate to say this, that for the most part, you're probably going to get a better deal going to a PWI than you will at HBCU. If you go to HBCU, you're going to most likely end up paying twice as much as you did if you went to a PWI, and you're not going to have as much financial resources at your disposal. They're not going to be able to offer you as much in the way of scholarships and funding like they would at a PWI. So,
but that's the commitment that you have to be willing to make, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's a shame to see them fall to the wayside like that. I think there was like 120 HBCUs when Obama came into the office. When he left, man, there was like I think there's 101 or 102 left.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you know, as much as black folks will, you know, as much as some black folks out here still to continue to prop up Obama, he was a major factor in the defunding of many of these HBCUs out here. You know, and you know, again, you know, black, you know, there's still a segment of black society that still gives him a pass, but you know, he is. I mean, they've had problems before he was in, but certainly he didn't do anything to address that or help that.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I mean, obviously you can't create a new HBCU. It'd be practically impossible at this point. But you know, not expanding into Africa, setting up institutions, you would have thought that how Morehouse would have went out and recruited the best African males they could find from the continent and the Caribbean.
Well, you know, Mike, if you did it online, maybe.
No, well, with HBCUs, you got to have a physical presence. But I'm saying that the time to do it would have been, would have been back then.
I mean, you do have African students going to Fisk and Howard and stuff. You definitely do have that. I mean,
but having a presence on the continent is more important than to actually having them come to the institution itself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't disagree with that. I really can't. I can't disagree with that
because they operate like embassies, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I can't. That could be helpful, but then in Africa, let's be frank about a lot of stuff there. You know, they don't have a lot of money there either. You know, you have countries that are getting wealthier. You have growing middle classes, but they're not. You know, they don't have a lot of dollars to support. You know, many of the higher institutions of learning there either with their money. It's tough. It's a tough game. Education. Yes. You know, it has to be under, to a large extent. It has to be under It's got to be under. A lot of it has to be underwritten by government. It really does, especially in poor countries. And if you don't have a very large tax base and so forth to really pull from these areas in which to get the funds, it's going to be tough. You know.
And you're exactly right, Nagon. It does have to be underrated because, for example, over the summer I was in Louisiana, and so I visited LSU and Tulane, and you know, and specifically I was at LSU both in New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and I kid you not, man, if you go to LSU in Baton Rouge, that is Baton Rouge. I mean, you also have Southern University, which is over on the north side of Baton Rouge, but really, Baton Rouge is defined by LSU. And I mean, this goes to the talk last night about, you know, when Complex had mentioned about the state universities having a lot of farmland and stuff like that. I cannot, you know, they have their own veterinary school, they have their own farms, everything. I mean, and all of this they get massive subsidies from the
certainly do.
From the state and the federal government too. So I mean, Nagon is exactly correct that, you know, it's not just sort of this private capital that has to fund HBCUs, but there does have to be an investment from state and federal sources as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. That's cool. You in my neck of the woods.
I'm not in your neck of the woods, but I was just there visiting.
You notice Dr. Phoenix didn't show up for the Southern hip hop. You know, hip hop is a science, so he didn't show up for that live stream.
When did you guys do that? Was that the other day?
That was Saturday.
Oh yeah, I was busy studying, man.
Yeah, I bet. You know, Keep It Techie was supposed to come up on there. He talked all that smoke for like a whole week. It was a no call, no show.
Oh no!
Where they at though?
Where they at though? No, where they at though? Oh, so they calling folks out no show? Oh, no.
I'm avoiding that conversation.
Oh yeah, I bet. We were like, what was the Southern hip hop Southern album that had such major impact? This guy said Ghost Town DJs, my boo. I said, oh man, we are finished.
God damn.
Oh,
my
no.
Nah, it was to keep it techie that said that, man. But I'm just saying, man.
Not KC and Y and V. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Guys didn't really make a good case for Southern hip hop as a whole, man. So I don't know, but Dr. Phoenix is from Chicago, so he's a big Twister fan. So
no, actually I'm not, but when I was in my 20s, it was kind of ironic because he used to always be cruising around on the south side of Chicago. Actually, him and R. Kelly, to be exact. And so I know a couple females that used to kick it with Homeboy back in the day. So, but yeah, I think as a whole, when it comes to stories like what you were just reading off a few moments ago, Mike, I think these are very much missed opportunities on behalf of HBCUs to really attract very, fresh blood, new and bright talent to your school and into these various programs. I mean, and this is what helps to, this is what at your big research universities, because you actually have designations, and I've never talked about this, but you do have designations for research universities in the school in the country. So you have something known as R1 status. So basically that means research 1 status, and basically there's only about 150 or so schools out of the thousands of colleges, universities that have this designation, and that means that you're getting the most research funds. So pretty much all your Ivy Leagues, pretty much all your Big Ten, your big state schools, they typically fit into that category. And so for HBCUs, typically they don't have this designation. I'm not saying for various reasons they don't have this designation, but one of the ways that you can kind of really move up in that notoriety and get that research going is that it really comes down to the students that you attract into those programs. It really does. If you're not attracting enough students, you don't have enough graduate students and doctoral students, that means you don't have enough research coming out of those various departments. So these are critical areas, especially for HBCUs, where you can really get the brain power that you need, especially a very young brother like this that 10 years time he can be a rising star in mathematics or whatever it is he decides to do. And again, if you have him associated with a HBCU, for example, I mean, that brings attention. So then now you go see the students his age, they're gonna be looking at him and like, oh, okay, they got students like that there. Maybe I need to think about applying there.
But the thing about the Harvards, the MITs, and so forth, they got all the bells and whistles to attract you.
Yeah, I'm actually going to MIT tomorrow. So,
and they got the whistle. They got all of that. So they can attract you in there because they can put you up in ridiculous looking like digs. They can hook you up, with all kind of, crazy scholarship dough and everything else like that, where you're kind of living high on the hog there, and you just go to school to study. You go to school to do what you do to love, and then they're wrapping you up in a big, warm, silken blanket. And it's there is a competing at that level. That at times it's tough. It's tough to compete there just because of the resources that those institutions have, and that's what makes it tough. And this kid may be super sharp. He might love a Howard or something else like that, but when he goes up there and he's up there in Yale, or he's up there in rolling around Harvard and all that, and he's dipping around. I mean, Dartmouth, and he's hooked up into these big institutions, and and they've got everything that you want in copious amounts. It's tough. It's tough to compete. in terms of stuff that
yeah.
They make rock stars.
Well, I know a lot of these. I know these schools in general, what they do, especially for talent that they're poaching, that they're recruiting for. You know, many these schools tend to offer them apartments. They offer them, very nice. I know, for example, where I'm at, the one of the major universities here has a similar. They have a similar program where they offer folks that they recruit. They offer them apartments.
Yep.
Very nice areas. I mean, you're getting stipends. I mean, you know that's kind of unheard of if you're an undergrad, but you're getting
Yeah.
you're getting stipends. They're paying you like $2-3 grand a month, and
You're
so
getting paid to study. You get
yeah,
paid to study.
yeah.
You
So I
get
mean,
paid to
these schools
study.
are all offering programs like that.
And they're seeing too that you stay there. You're warped up, you're wrapped up in a warm silk blanket,
Yeah.
and they're rubbing again. You're rubbing your feet, and the only thing you got to do is sit there and do what you like to do.
Yeah, and you get
Nothing.
the inside track. You get to meet the professors and whatever department you're going to be in or whatever. You know, so I mean, you totally get the red carpet treatment. You know, when you're being recruited for these schools. So
they hook you up. So there's one brother. It was last year. I think he got into every Ivy League school scholarship, and had some white teacher. I had some white. Had a mayonnaise, excuse me, a mayonnaise broadcaster she was just hating on this dude. You just saw her face. She was hating. It was his brother who knocked it out the box. But all these schools were fighting for him. So, and he had gotten to every single one of the Ivy Leagues, and they were literally throwing mad cash at this dude, man. They were throwing. I mean, this was the NFL of students. I mean, it was, first round draft pick all day long. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah,
and they just throwing dough at this dude to go to the most butter league spots.
Yeah.
Deal with that.
Cocaine Kells in the chat says the best HBCU quarterback is white.
Yeah, I heard that.
I can believe that. I can totally believe that. It wasn't that long ago where I think it was Howard that had a white male that was a valedictorian. Maybe about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, about Zach Morris is on campus now.
Well, I already told you guys what happened when I went to Morehouse Medical School last summer. So
disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Vomit in my mouth.
I mean, no shade to HBCUs because I do think they offer great opportunities. But again, to what Nagon was just saying, these schools have virtually unlimited money, man. There's no running out. I mean, even it's not even just your Ivy Leagues, man. These Big Ten state schools, man, they got virtually unlimited money. They got these massive sports programs that pay for everything, fund every damn thing.
Yeah.
I see hot scholars.
Scholars.
Yeah.
Sweat.
And I mean, go ahead, brother. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I see how it is because I have a good friend. He's out there in Arizona, ASU. They're heavily underwritten by the state of Arizona, but you get a nice boat there, and you got a nice place. You got a good hookup. You're cruising around. You got dough in your pocket. You're running around, beautiful area. And it's you're having fun. So I mean, yeah, it's the HSBCUs, I like them. My parents went there. My mother went to Allen University, and then left from there, went to NYU, and from NYU, she went to University of Connecticut, and then went to NYU. Grad. Father went to Howard. So I'm very familiar with. I'm very familiar with all of what goes on with the HBCU. My parents were there, so I know what time it is. But when you look at that, and then you go to some of these other big campuses, with the huge money, the huge endorsements, and the massive underwritings that they get, it's a lot of fraud. Man. They have a lot of cash. They have a lot to entice.
You want to hear something? You want to hear a very interesting story? Last year, I actually went to an interview at a school, and it was actually in Chicago. And you know where it was at? It was at the Waldorf Astoria. So it was anyone's familiar with Chicago, if you go to the Gold Coast area. There's a Waldorf Astoria there.
Mm.
And the moment I walked, I remember I got out of my car. I was able to get some street parking literally right across the street from the place. And I remember I got out the car. You will not see not one black person there. But I walked in there, and I was talking with some of the folks there from the school. And I remember when I talked with them, I said, this is a very nice place. You guys pay for this stuff? Like, yeah. I mean, they had this really elaborate like ballroom. It was really nice. I'll put it that way.
It was regal.
I mean, it was like, and like I said, I mean, grew up in Chicago. That was my first time ever being at that Waldorf Astoria in Chicago. And I was like, good God. I mean, as soon as you get out there, there's like a Ferrari and a Rolls Royce Phantom parked out in front of it. So I mean, yeah, it was just crazy, man. But I mean, this is just kind of the deep pockets that these schools have, you know, in comparison to HBCUs. And so, yeah, I mean,
they've got a lot to entice. They can entice the best students. So you're dealing with that. They've got a lot to entice. And you're talking about some 17 or 18-year-old kid, you know, who's got a big frontal lobe, and you know, he wants to play every game on the planet that he can find, and live in some nice digs and sit back and study when he can hang loose. It's too much. You know, they've got, you know.
Yeah, but Syracuse didn't have to do that, man. People came to Syracuse University because they wanted to be an Orangeman. There was a time when it was just.
Well, you know, Syracuse. You know, me and Jim Brown on who went there, but
you went to Syracuse, man?
Huh? Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, with Syracuse, I mean, you know, if you go up there to campus now, it's got a, you know, hotel on campus. I mean, a big Sheraton up there. I mean, the place is it's ridiculous. I mean, if you look at it, it looks like a small city. It's redunculous. So if you get a scholarship up there, you are hooked. You're living large.
Yeah, it's ironic, man. When I was in the military, I actually used to go to their medical center there because I used to do some training with the medical students, and you know they have this big hospital that's part of the Syracuse health system, and so I used to go to the cadaver labs, and the place was nice, and I used to go to a bunch of parties over on Syracuse campus, but we ain't gonna talk about that. But
yeah, I mean, you know, it's got a high party. You do have a lot of partying going on, but man, that campus is hooked.
Yeah, it's completely butter laid, man. It's
hooked. You go up there, it's big business up there. That campus is off the chain. It was pretty nice when I went up there. Now it's ridiculous.
Yeah, so, like I said, this was
anybody full scholarship up there. you bowling. That's just how that's going down. Balling. So I mean, you know, they have a lot to, you know, the big, and I'm telling you, Syracuse makes money. They make money. That place makes bank. Yeah. So it's, you know, they are about the cash. So that's just kind of how it is.
All right, let me close this out. Thank you all for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thanks for having me, brother. Got to get back to studying.
Awesome. Great hangout.
What the hell just happened?
Mike still there? So it sounds like Mike crashed.
Yeah, I don't know.
Thanks, fellas.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Brother But anyhow, gentlemen, have a good night. I will catch you guys probably maybe later in the week.
All right, Dr. Phoenix.
All right, later.
All right. Yo, Complex, get a hold of me later, man.
Okay, we'll do.
All right. Okay, guys.
Gentlemen.
All right. Yeah, I don't know if Mike's mic is coming back on or what just happened there, because he would have to close this out here.